Welcome back. A very, very dramatic night in New Hampshire, indeed, around the country. Big winners tonight on the Democratic and Republican side. On the Republican side, first of all, Donald Trump. A huge win for him tonight. Take a look at the votes. You see right there, he had 35%. He's almost 37,000 votes ahead of the second place finisher, John Kasich, the Ohio governor, with 16%. There still is a fight underway for third place right now. You see Ted Cruz at 12%, Jeb Bush at 11%, Marco Rubio at 10%, Christie, the New Jersey governor, finishing very, very sad sixth right there. And he's gone back to New Jersey to rethink what's going on, take a little bit of breather, he says, as of right now, discuss with his families. Only a little while ago, in his victory speech, Donald Trump said this.
We are going to make our country so strong. We are going to start winning again. We don't win anymore as a country. We don't win on trade. We don't win with the military. We can't beat ISIS. We don't win with anything. We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much. You are going to be so happy. We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before. I love you all. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you. We are going now to South Carolina. We're going to win in South Carolina. I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very impressive win by Donald Trump. On the Democratic side, right now, Bernie Sanders, he also has an extremely impressive win over Hillary Clinton. Almost 70% of the vote is in. Take a look at this. He's 36,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton. He's got 60% of the vote to Hillary Clinton's 39%. Bernie Sanders, just a little while ago, in his victory speech, said this.
9 months ago, we began our campaign here in New Hampshire. We had no campaign organization, we had no money, and we were taking on the most powerful political organization in the United States of America. And tonight, with what appears to be a record-breaking voter turnout, because of a huge voter turnout, and I say huge, we won because we harnessed the energy and the excitement that the Democratic Party will need to succeed in November.
Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, with a very impressive win over Hillary Clinton. John King, you're taking a closer look. Let's look at the Republican side first. This battle for third place that is really underway. Can Bush, for example, can he take third and beat Cruz?
Can he? Yes. But if you look at the results now, 72% of the vote is in. Trump with that big lead, he's going to win, and he's going to win convincingly, overperforming his last poll number. Very interesting there. In Iowa, he underperformed. Donald Trump overperformed. John Kasich, impressive second place there. No one's going to catch him for that. But now, as you look right here, so what are we looking at there? Less 700 votes or so to get Jeb Bush in. Can he get there? Yes. Why? Because you have some places out here. John Kasich thinks he's going to do better out here than Jeb Bush. But you have places out here where you have more moderate Republicans. We'll see. We haven't gotten any votes from Hanover. This is right along the Connecticut River, separating Vermont and New Hampshire. And Wolf, curiously, one of the larger Republican suburban areas, Salem here, right along the Massachusetts border, no votes at all. This is, if you go back in time, this is Mitt Romney country. They're going to bring down the leaders up here. This is Mitt Romney country. 56% of the vote. Establishment Republicans, a decent-sized population chunk, and at the moment, we have nothing from Salem. So you expect Governor Kasich to do okay here, but Governor Bush could get some votes there. But as you can see this map filling in, just look at it. That is Donald Trump everywhere. Because of the fractured field, Donald Trump is getting, whether it's 28%, 25%, as high as the 30s in some places. He's winning where Mitt Romney won impressively. He's winning where John McCain won impressively. If you go back in time, you see, this is Ron Paul, the coral color up here. Remember these colors right here and take a peek when we come forward. He's winning everywhere. Because of the splintered vote, he's winning across the entire state. You have one town for Jeb Bush, about a half dozen or so, maybe 6 or 7 for Governor Kasich. At the moment, though, Trump is filling in this map But again, as we look for the second and third, 72%, it's doable. We got some math to do, and it's conceivable. It's conceivable if Marco Rubio has a strong performance in a town or two that he could jump up. But as you look at that 10% number, you need 10% in New Hampshire to get any delegates. If you're below 10%, you get no delegates. So watch to see if that's rounded up or whether he can crack above 10%. Because just quickly on some of the conversations going on tonight, he has gone home. I'm told from 2 advisors he is well aware he gets no delegates out of New Hampshire tonight. He knows it's going to be very tough to raise money. He wants to go home and talk to his wife. But the conversation among top Christie advisors is there is no viable path to the Republican nomination. Now he has to decide whether he wants to press on despite that realization. The Cruz campaign tonight is very happy if they can stay here. What they think third place does is the bronze medal out of New Hampshire. But more importantly, if Rubio stays down here, what the Cruz campaign wants to say to Tea Party conservatives, evangelicals who might be with Rubio in South Carolina, it's time to coalesce against Donald Trump. So we're going to watch a little chess game play out in this race because remember in our tracking poll, Wolf, just before the debate, he was at 18%. The final tracking poll had him at 17%. That's a big drop, and that is the conversation in Republican circles tonight. And I've talked to 2 fundraisers in the Rubio campaign who say their job got a lot harder tonight to keep the money coming in. So we're going to watch this play out as we look for this. This might seem a little silly. You're looking at this here, several hundred votes, right? Jeb Bush wants to be here. Inside the Bush campaign tonight, they think third, even if it's just by a couple dozen votes, would be much better than fourth. And there's even some talk among some of his advisors, maybe you should have skipped Iowa and spent all that time in New Hampshire trying to get into a stronger third or even second place if he hadn't been out there the last week.
Bush and his super PAC, they still have a lot of money. Right. The money is not necessarily a problem for them.
He's not going anywhere. He is in this race, whether he's at 4th place or he won't. It doesn't look like he'll slip down. He's in this race without a doubt. He would like to be up here. Just the 3rd place gives you a little more moral high ground. The Bush family history in South Carolina is a good one. His father won there. His brother won there. President Bush, George W. Bush, will be on the campaign trail this week. But just for fundraising purposes and sort of chest-pumping purposes, he would love to...
But take a look at the decisive win that Donald Trump had. If you take a look at that, he's got 70,500 votes, and Kasich second, 33,000, more than double the second-place finisher.
More than 2 to 1. And look at the map. Look at the map. These are the towns, the cities. You see the big cities. New Hampshire is mostly small towns. Where did Donald Trump win? Almost everywhere. Almost everywhere. Just went across the state. And I'll compare this to Mitt Romney. Very similar in the sense that Romney did very well in winning. I don't know if we can go back in time with this. Romney, see that? Donald Trump actually carrying even more of the state than Mitt Romney did in 2016 when you look at the Trump map. It's a very impressive win. And again, the conversation among Republicans is, well, he wouldn't get it if we didn't have all these candidates in the race. But you know what? They are in the race, and he got it.
A decisive win for Donald Trump. Let's take a look at the Democrats. How did Bernie Sanders manage to really crush Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, a state she won 8 years ago?
This is a shellacking or more. It's a total rout if you look at the state of New Hampshire. 60% of the vote in again. There was some criticism of our CNN WMUR tracking poll. I'll have to tell you, I was a little skeptical myself at some points. Dead on. The poll was dead on. The poll was pretty good at the top of the Republican race, too. And the debate shook out 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the Republican race. That is dead on. 60% for Bernie Sanders. I think our last poll had him at 58%. Hillary Clinton at 39%. You know what's interesting about that 39%? Same number she got in 2008. But you're in the 2-man race now, and Bernie Sanders is winning everywhere. Let's go back in time. Again, you can't compare these 2 races. It's a different 2 candidates as opposed to a more crowded field. But if you're the Clintons and you won all this, dark blue is Hillary Clinton, and you won all this 8 years ago, that's a message. That's a message from Democratic voters in New Hampshire now. Predominantly white electorate here. She's moving on to Nevada and South Carolina, where you have African Americans and Latinos. The Clinton campaign says it will get better as we move on. If you look at the exit polling just among Democrats, a virtual tie between Clinton and Sanders. They will take some solace in that in the Clinton campaign because, again, as you move on, often mostly closed primaries, only Democrats can vote, not independents. But no matter how you try to spin it, if winning in Iowa by that much was a win, well, then losing New Hampshire by this much is a thump.
Let me second what you said. Those polls that we did in New Hampshire on the Democratic and Republican side, pretty much spot on right there. I want to walk over to Jake and Dana that we're watching this battle that's underway, Jake, for third place on the Republican side. It's pretty intense. It's pretty close still right now. What, about 25% of the vote is still out?
That's right, Wolf. And we've talked about Donald Trump's colossal victory. Right now is on track to tie John McCain's 19-point victory from 16 years ago. And we talked about John Kasich, his surprisingly strong second-place finish. But if you look at the three next in line, Cruz at 12%, Bush at 11%, Rubio at 10%. That is a tight contest, and there are still many votes outstanding.
That's right. There's so many things to unpack and so many sort of plots and subplots in there, right? I mean, first of all, let's just talk about Ted Cruz. He seems to be the beneficiary of all of those others, Bush, Rubio, even Christie to a lesser extent, but more John Kasich, kind of splitting the mainstream or the vote, and he kind of rose to the top. And this is not really his natural habitat.
No, it's not.
You know, I mean, there are a lot of independent voters. There aren't that many sort of strong
religious conservatives,
and he did pretty well. He did have a very strong ground game here, kind of under the radar. But it's the Bush-Rubio drama, frankly, that's just so fascinating.
Mentor and protege.
Right, and
past.
Exactly. And the fact that Bush, at least now, seems to be eking out a better finish than Rubio. There are a lot of people in Bush camp who are very, very happy about that because it got really, really personal. And they were very upset that Rubio seemed to have, like, sort of eclipsed him, especially after his strong showing in Iowa, don't you think?
Jeb Bush will go on to fight another day, no doubt. He has too much money behind him, too much motivation, but boy, he would love a third-place finish more than a fourth-place finish. Let's go to the likely third-place finisher, Ted Cruz. We haven't called it yet, but that's where the standing is right now. Sunlen Serfati, she's in Hollis, New Hampshire, at Ted Cruz headquarters. Sunlen, the campaign probably feeling pretty good. They did not put a lot of energy or money into the state compared to the guys who are in 4th, 5th, and 6th place.
That's right. I can tell you, even though Ted Cruz lost here, I can tell you it is absolute jubilation behind the scenes within the Cruz campaign. And that is for two big reasons. One, this battle for third, that is very good for them. This is better than expected. That exceeded their expectations, too. And then secondly, it's much ado about Marco Rubio's positioning. They are very eager tonight, the Cruz campaign, to really cast this as a big blow to Marco Rubio and really make the argument going forward that he is not the establishment candidate that can coalesce the establishment wing of the party. So they're very happy that Jeb Bush kind of had a revival tonight. One campaign official saying that they love the position that Jeb Bush is in tonight. So they feel that they can take these two things going forward and push that into South Carolina. Jake.
All right, Sunlen Serfati. Let's turn down to the Democratic race. Breonna Keeler is at Sanders headquarters in Concord, New Hampshire. And Breonna, the big question, of course, is what does Bernie Sanders do from here? We knew that he had a good game, a good ground game here in New Hampshire. We knew that the very liberal Democrats in Iowa liked him. He didn't win there, but he came close. Where does he go from here? What next?
Yeah, that's right. I spoke a short time ago to his campaign manager, Jeff Weaver, about that very thing, Jake. He said this win here in New Hampshire was crucial when it came to building momentum. But, you know, definitely the campaign realizes the terrain changes when you get into these next early contests, Nevada and South Carolina. I asked him how they're going to make sure they perform well in those states as well. Here's what he told me. How do you push through to Nevada and specifically South Carolina when the demographics really favor Hillary Clinton because of who she has supporting her in African-American voters and Hispanic voters? Well, I think you've seen in recent days an increasingly large number of African-American leaders who are coming to our campaign. Ben Jealous, recent past president of the NAACP, people like Nina Turner, state senator, former state senator from Ohio, Dr. Cornel West, and other people who are coming forward, state senators and reps in South Carolina who are stepping forward to support Senator Sanders, a call for a political revolution that will deal with issues of institutional racism, police violence, and much of the poverty and lack of opportunity we find in many African-American communities. Is it enough to stand up against some of the endorsements, a lot of endorsements that we have seen from prominent African-Americans for Hillary Clinton? Well, I think you've seen here in New Hampshire, we had a few endorsements from a few brave state legislators, but most of the political establishment with Secretary Clinton. I think in Iowa, I don't know that we had a single state representative in Iowa, the entire political establishment with Secretary Clinton. This campaign is speaking to people at the grassroots level of all races, all ethnicities. So
you know, we're very gratified to have the endorsements we do have, but this is ultimately a people's campaign, and we're speaking to people one-on-one.
So key to Bernie Sanders' message tonight, some of his big applause lines talking against Wall Street. And I asked Weaver about reports that first were broken on CNN, but really gained some traction today about Bernie Sanders raising money from big dollar donors for Senate Democrats, also accepting tens of thousands of dollars from the Democratic Party at a time when Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, other banks were donating. Weaver dismissed those reports as smears from the Clinton campaign and from her backers, and he said he expects that things are going to get very negative and nasty here in the weeks and months to come between his campaign and the Clinton campaign. And Jake, I also just asked him, are you going to win Nevada? And he said, we are going to try. That is a sign that he knows it is a tough road ahead.
That's right, Brianna. Thanks so much. And Dana, a few days ago, I was speaking with a former Clinton advisor who said, you know, Iowa and New Hampshire are just not made for her. And I said, why not? And he said, too liberal and too white. And now the terrain shifts. More moderate Democrats, plus African Americans in South Carolina, especially Latinos in Nevada, especially.
That's right. And actually, you probably shouldn't say and, but the problem for Hillary Clinton is even if she does as well as expected in South Carolina because it is more favorable terrain, Bernie Sanders has money. He's got a lot of money. And it's money that keeps coming in. And the next set of contests are a little bit mixed and muddled. And so some of the states on Super Tuesday, March 1st, are favorable to him. Some are favorable to her. So what this means is it could be a long haul.
It could be a long haul. We're going to have a lot more nights like this one. Anderson Cooper, back to you in Washington.
Jake, Dana, thanks very much. We have a new panel here of political commentators. Kevin Madden is joining us, Republican strategist. Amanda Carpenter, former communications director for Senator Ted Cruz. Bill Press, author of Buyer's Remorse, How Obama Let Progressives Down, host of the Bill Press Show, and Donna Brazil, Democratic strategist and political commentator. Donna, let's talk about on the Democratic side how the race does change now moving forward. Obviously, you have Nevada, then South Carolina on the Democratic side.
First of all, tonight, after the results are probably in, the delegate count will likely be that Senator Sanders pick up 13, Secretary Clinton 11. Because we apportion it based on the results, 15% is the threshold. The delegate count will continue to be close until one of the candidates pulls out. We go to 11 days from now. On the Democratic side, we go to Nevada. The Republicans go to South Carolina.
And the demographics change a lot in Nevada and
absolutely.
In South Carolina.
You have a more diverse electorate. The electorate could be upwards of, what, 35, 40% more diverse. We also have a closed caucus in Nevada where you have to be a registered Democrat in order to participate, unlike tonight, when independents could walk in and get a Democratic ballot. South Carolina has an open system, of course, that will also benefit. I mean, so, and then, of course, Super Tuesday, March 1st. The political terrain is vastly different from the political terrain that we just saw in both Iowa and New Hampshire.
Bill, I mean, can Bernie Sanders compete in Nevada, in South Carolina?
I think absolutely. And I think he showed tonight he can compete nationwide. I mean, this is, to use his word, huge, you know, for Bernie Sanders. It really is. I mean, he showed, I think he's a very serious candidate. He's a national candidate. He's going to get tons of money from his grassroots supporters. It's not going to be probably $27 maybe anymore. Maybe that average is going to go up. You know, he's got those resources. He's definitely going to be there for the long haul. This is going to be more challenging terrain for him, no doubt. But he demonstrated tonight, you know, this turnout, a lot of it. His message is, I can get people excited. I can get people out. The party needs that. He delivered on that tonight, and he delivered across the board. I mean, in income groups, every group income except those making over $200,000, he won. She won that one. With young people and middle-aged people, he won every group except those over 65. Right. And Hillary won those.
And those making more than, I think, $200,000.
That's why I said $200,000 a year. So I think the breadth and the depth of support, don't underestimate him moving forward. Just one final point, don't take too much time, but his difficulties in the South, yes, we recognize that because of what his constituency has been. But as he moves into the Midwest, into Illinois and Ohio, Michigan, he starts talking jobs. He's the economic populist, and he's going to talk TPP, That's a big problem for Hillary. Keystone and NAFTA. So I think there's going to be some very promising territory for Bernie
Also
Sanders.
problematic for Hillary Clinton and good for Bernie Sanders is when you look at those exit polls, the people who are looking for trust in a candidate.
Yes.
I mean, overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly.
I mean, I think above 80%, I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but I think above 80% or 90%.
93 to 5.
93 to 5. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Yep.
Right, exactly.
On the Republican side, Amanda, Kevin, what do you think changed tonight?
I think we do have to spend some time talking about Ted Cruz. You have a guy who only spent less than $600,000 in the state by some figures. You have Bush, between his campaign and the super PAC, $36 million. Rubio, $15.2 million. This was supposed to be the state where the establishments could prove that they could take down Trump. They had to show that they could flex their muscle, and they failed.
And that there would be a clear establishment candidate coming out of
Yeah, they're still muddled. It's still a mess. They're going to go into South Carolina with no consensus. And meanwhile, Ted Cruz barely spent any money and had a third-place finish. I mean, that's phenomenal. It speaks to the discipline of the campaign, and that they're going to have the capacity to go the distance.
And moving forward, when you start to look at the map, certainly among evangelical populations, I mean, South Carolina, the whole southern region is very good.
Yeah, South Carolina is very similar to Iowa, where Cruz already beat Trump. And then going into SEC Tuesday, he has a lot of money in the bank that has been on reserves waiting to go. Yeah. And the other candidates don't
I was thinking about you. I mean, you worked obviously with Romney when John was at the board showing the Romney map and now the Trump map. I mean, Trump getting a lot of those, all those areas that Romney got.
That's right. So he's appealing to not just your very, very conservative voters, but those voters that are more towards the middle and independents. And they're more upset, I think, with the establishment. And so that's where he has. That's the odd thing is he's put together a pretty compelling coalition. So I think that ought to worry a lot of the folks as we start to head south. The other thing too is I would agree with Amanda that one of the underreported stories here tonight is Cruz's third place finish. I think in New Hampshire, in a state that's not very well suited to his profile, that's pretty impressive. But this race is about to get very expensive. Iowa and New Hampshire, they're states that really they tend to reward those that do the retail politicking. Right. Now we're starting to get into more of an air war. And we're also getting to the part of the calendar where we're going to have a number of states on March 1 where we're going to have to compete. So folks like John Kasich, while he had a great night tonight, he's going to have to wake up tomorrow and raise a ton of money. He's also going to have to really draft off of this enthusiasm that he has or this newfound attention that he's gotten and start to build more of an infrastructure where he's going to be able to compete in some of these other states. Otherwise,
and some of the other campaigns are already saying, look, he does not have the ground game in South Carolina.
He can replicate the New Hampshire model in South Carolina and then in March 1st.
And that's why with Bush tonight, it is going to help him because he actually is still well-funded. And he does have probably as impressive a ground game as anybody in South Carolina. So the fact that he's got a super PAC that's well-funded and a good ground game, it's starting to tilt towards him.
I should just point out, with 75% of the vote, I think now Bush is within 500 or so of, within 500.
Yeah, we're looking at like a virtual tie for
Cruz. It's been about 600, so it's actually a little bit closer up right now.
Don't you think the big funders, though, on the Republican side are going to continue to hang a little bit back? Because they were kind of waiting for this to all settle out before they put up their dough. And now it's not settled at all. So you're going to, aside from Kasich maybe being able to fundraise off of this, I think the big
that's why those
don't know where they're going to go.
The danger is at what point do they hang back so long it becomes a two-person race? I mean, if you've got Trump and Cruz, when you think about how many delegates the two of them can get on March 1st in those deep southern states, they could be so far out ahead of these guys.
It just may be that Donald Trump ends up as the establishment
That's
candidate.
exactly right.
Which is an incredible reality.
Let's go to Wolf, who's looking at more numbers. Wolf?
You know what? A lot of people in South Carolina were watching very, very closely. Specifically, two groups of voters. We invited Democrat and Republican, two separate groups. They've assembled at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. We're going to get an indication where they come out as a result of what happened in New Hampshire tonight. They've been watching our coverage all night. When we come back, we're going to South Carolina. That's the next big contest. Together with Nevada, we're watching this race for the White House. Our first indication of how South Carolinians are reacting when we come back. Two very impressive wins tonight on the Democrat and the Republican side of the ledger. On the Republican side, Donald Trump impressively wins with 34% of the vote, 16%. Number 2 to John Kasich, the Ohio governor. There's a fight underway right now for third place. Ted Cruz is at 12%. There you see it changing a little. Jeb Bush just behind at 11%. Marco Rubio just behind Jeb Bush at 11%. Christie, very disappointing, only 8% in New Hampshire. But look at Donald Trump. He's almost 40,000 votes ahead, more than double John Kasich in New Hampshire. On the Democratic side, also a very impressive win by Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont. 60% to Hillary Clinton's 39%. He beats her so far by almost 40,000 votes. Still plenty of votes left outstanding, but this is an impressive win by Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. Very impressive win by Donald Trump in New Hampshire as well. The next big contests are going to be in South Carolina. I want to go to Randy Kay right now. Randy, you've assembled groups of voters in South Carolina to get an assessment. They were watching our coverage, and we're going to get the initial indication of how they responded.
Absolutely, Wolf. We are here in Charleston watching with a group of undecided voters, about 65 undecided voters. We can show you the big group here. On this side of the room, we have the Democratic voters. On the other side of the room, we have the Republican voters. We'll get to them in just a second. But I want to ask the Democratic voters here, Bernie Sanders did so well tonight, winning New Hampshire. Did he change any of your minds? Has anyone decided to vote for Bernie Sanders tonight? Raise your hands that wasn't going to vote for him before. All right, so we have a small hand, about a handful of our undecided voters there have now decided. So let me ask here on the Republican side, John Kasich also, big surprise in New Hampshire. Raise your hands. Did John Kasich win any of you over tonight? Not one person raising their hand. Okay, how about Donald Trump? Did Donald Trump, coming in first, win anyone over tonight? You decided. 4 people decided on Donald Trump. Now, we were able to see their reaction tonight in real time because they all had in their hot little hands, Wolf, one of these. It's a dial tester. So right now it's neutral on 50, but when they liked what they were saying in their speeches, they would turn it up. So there it is at 83, and then they would turn it down if they didn't like it. So at one point, Donald Trump was speaking tonight, and this group had a big reaction. Watch this.
We are going to preserve our very sacred Second Amendment. There's not going to be any more chipping away at our Second Amendment. If we had protection in California recently and so many other places, you could even look to Paris. If there were bullets going in the other direction, believe me, it would have been a whole different story, folks. But nobody had protection.
So the dial really spiked there for Donald Trump when he was talking about the Second Amendment and having people be armed with their own guns. Hope, what do you think? I know you said coming in tonight that you sort of felt like you aligned with Donald Trump, but he's not your guy.
He's not my guy.
What's the problem?
Even though he says he's a winner, he's not my winner, and he just doesn't tell us how he's going to do it. He says he's going to eliminate ISIS, but he's just going to do it. He's going to build a wall, but he's just going to do it, and it's simple wall too. But
all right, so let me ask Sam next to you, who's a big fan of Donald Trump, and you've already decided on him.
I like Donald Trump, well, more than all the other candidates.
What do you like about him?
He says he's a winner, and he won.
And you think he can get it done, right? You like all the promises and all his plans.
Yes, I like the fact that he's not a politician, and I think that he can do much better. The country needs to change, and he's the man for it.
So you think you're getting close to deciding on him 100%?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, let's move back over to the Democratic side because they had a big reaction, of course, to Bernie Sanders, who was the big winner in New Hampshire tonight. And they especially reacted to this soundbite during Sanders' speech. Watch this first.
No, we will not allow huge tax breaks for billionaires. We will not allow huge cuts to Social Security, veterans' needs, Medicare, Medicaid, and education.
All right, and let me ask Becca here, because you came in tonight as a Bernie Sanders supporter. You have a few doubts, but you still really like him. What do you think of his big win in New Hampshire?
It was actually a lot bigger than I expected, and I still really like a lot of his ideas, but I actually was swayed by Hillary's speech.
Really? So you've changed your mind?
Well, I'm still undecided, but while I love what Bernie had to say, I love what they both had to say. Definitely, maybe more undecided tonight than I was when I came in.
You're going in the wrong direction.
Right, I
but
know.
You're a college student, and
Yes.
you think you really do like what Bernie Sanders has to say, which you could see he was surrounded by young people tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, again, you know, obviously as a college student, I love all of the ideas that he has that focus on higher education and making that easier on people. But as I've said, I'm also concerned about how those things can be implemented. So in that respect, I might be a little more interested in what Hillary has to say.
All right. Anybody else here decide on Bernie Sanders? Anyone? Anyone? Anybody here decide on Bernie Sanders? All right. Well, here, let me just ask this gentleman quickly. What made you decide on Bernie Sanders, sir?
Specifically, his commitment to do something about mass incarceration of African Americans and Latinos. That really impacted me. And I didn't feel that he had those kinds of sensitivities before, but he said it with such passion and such conviction tonight. He won me over.
All right. Well, we like the sound of that. We want voters to be decided, not undecided, but it's always so interesting to hear all these opinions. And I can tell you tonight, Wolf, that of our group of about 65 undecided voters, I'm told that 23 have decided after watching the speeches tonight and all of the debates that they've seen so far. Wolf, back to you.
Very good focus group in Charleston, South Carolina. We'll be getting ready to head down there for the Republican and Democratic contest. Randy, thanks very much. Thanks to all the people who assembled there at the College of Charleston. Let's go over to John King right now. John, we're getting more information. 77% of the vote is now in. What an impressive win for Donald Trump tonight.
As I think many have said it before me, he would say it's huge, right?
Yeah.
Look, it is an impressive win. Polling above his last poll, so he overperformed tonight. The big criticism of Trump after Iowa was that he underperformed. Different caucus to primary system, but he overperformed tonight. Kasich has second place locked up. Wolf, this is an interesting battle right now. Jeb Bush trails 800 votes there. Ted Cruz, can Jeb Bush make up those votes? The answer is yes. It won't be easy, but it's possible. Let me show you why it's possible. There's two decent-sized places still out. This is Salem, right down here, a suburb right along the Massachusetts border. It's a little more than 2% of the state population. And if you go back in time, let me move this down so you see the top of the pack here. Slide that down. Mitt Romney won with nearly 60% of the vote. And if you go back to 2008, split between Romney and McCain. And Rudy Giuliani was third. These are establishment, mainstream Republicans there. So it's possible when the Salem vote comes in, you expect Trump to win because he's winning everything around it. But Bush could make up some ground there. We'll see as it goes out. One other place I want to show you is Rochester, right up here, right along the Maine border. Rochester, again, a little more than 2% of the population. So about 5% of the population is still out. They're alphabetical here because we have 0% of the vote in. Rochester is actually an indicator of how New Hampshire goes. Since in 11 presidential cycles for 44 years, Rochester's gotten it wrong only once.
Really?
In 1992, it picked Bill Clinton over Paul Tsongas, but otherwise in every Republican and every Democratic primary, except for that one in 1992, Rochester wins. So you could expect that to fill in for Donald Trump, but again, it's a place where, if you go back in time, it was big for Romney. It was big for McCain. So there are establishment Republicans. It's possible Bush could pick up some votes there. Trump and Kasich expected to get some too. But for Bush, the challenge is, can you make up the now 800 or so, 830 votes separating him from Ted Cruz?
Well, there's still 23% of the vote outstanding.
Right. So, and some people think that's so silly. Why are we focusing about that? This is for conversations with donors. This is for conversations heading on to South Carolina, that Bush would much rather, even if it's just by a few dozen votes, much rather be third than fourth as this plays out. And just to go down the line here and look, very important for Marco Rubio on a disappointing night that he blames on himself in that debate to stay above 10%. If you don't stay above 10%, you don't get any delegates, which is why this is a crushing blow to Governor Christie. And there will be conversations as well about whether Carly Fiorina should stay in the race because she draws establishment votes. Dr. Carson, last place at 2%, but he's already said, see you in South Carolina, which is the next stop, Wolf. And you want to take a quick look to South Carolina. Let's stay on the Republican side for a minute. Why does Ted Cruz want to go to South Carolina? Remember what happened in Iowa. The darker the area, the higher the percentage of evangelicals. Let me shrink this down a little bit. Let's come out to the national map first. Here's New Hampshire. Not many evangelicals. Here's Iowa. A good chunk of evangelicals. But when you get down here, South Carolina is next. especially up here. Interesting, Donald Trump launched today in Greenville, up here in the most conservative evangelical part of the state. Donald Trump today launched a vicious ad attacking Ted Cruz. It is a hard-hitting ad, hitting on immigration and other issues, saying Ted Cruz can't be trusted. Donald Trump knows this would be his wheelhouse. If you go back to the 2008 Republican race, let me come out of the demographics for just a second, turn those off. If you look at it here, McCain wins the state by winning in here and winning along the coast, the more moderate coast. But this is Mike Huckabee up in evangelical country. A race could be very much like this as we go forward here. The question is it just Trump and Cruz, or do we get somebody else viable? Bush is very well organized in the other states as we go forward. But if you look at that map is why Ted Cruz is happy that this race, let me come back to the evangelical population. Ted Cruz is most of March, not all of March, but most of March is fought out down here, where Ted Cruz thinks he can do very, very well. And unlike Santorum and Huckabee, the guys who won Iowa the last 2 times, Cruz has money. Cruz has organization. Cruz has a database. So he's looking at this map, and he's looking at a weakened Marco Rubio and questions about whether Kasich can compete in the South, questions about whether Jeb Bush can recover. Ted Cruz is looking at the map ahead through March, and you have to be very eager to get south if you're Ted Cruz.
South Carolina, as you point out, very different on the Republican and Democratic side as opposed to New Hampshire and Iowa, for that matter. Let's take a look at South Carolina and the Democratic contest. A very different Democratic electorate in South Carolina than we just saw in New Hampshire.
And remember, everything changed in 2008 when Barack Obama won Iowa. Hillary Clinton had most of the endorsements in the African-American community, the establishment African-American community, because they didn't think Obama was viable. They didn't think he could actually be the nominee. Once he started winning, everything changed. And look at what happened in South Carolina. 55% for Obama, 27% for Clinton, John Edwards at 18%. And if you look at what happened there, the white vote was 43%. Obama actually came in third behind Edwards and Clinton, but 55% of the vote was African-American. And as we've seen in every election since with Obama on the ballot, boom. Nearly 8 in 10 African Americans in South Carolina voted for Obama. Clinton got 20%, Edwards just 2%. That was the difference. And that is what Hillary Clinton is counting on now, that more than half of the electorate will be African American. She thinks that's votes in the bank for her, but as the folks across the room have been discussing, that's a great conversation going forward. And Wolf, again, just to show you, if you come out to the national demographic map here, if you look at the African American population, as the map goes south for Hillary Clinton as well, as we spent a lot of time down here in March, the darker the area, the larger the African-American population. Hillary Clinton is hoping, and again, let's see if Bernie Sanders can make inroads. Hillary Clinton is hoping the demographics help her. And just one more to show you quickly. Take this one off. We also go to Nevada next. And, of course, if you come down and find the Latino population, this is New Hampshire. Again, the darker the area, the more Latinos. New Hampshire has very few. You come out here to Nevada, you see, obviously, a higher Latino population. That's Hillary Clinton's hope. You're into the traditional Democratic base now. The question is, after this big defeat in New Hampshire, can Bernie Sanders make some inroads?
Great stuff, John. Thanks very much. I want to go over to David Chelian, our political director right now. You're getting some more insight on the Republican side right now. It's fascinating how all of a sudden Donald Trump, 6-7 months ago, who would have thought, decisively crushing the rest of the Republicans.
That's right. And Wolf, we've been talking for the better part of the last year about sort of that outsider lane, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and that establishment lane. And we've seen sort of that muddled middle in the establishment lane tonight. So we took a deeper dive into sort of what is helping them to see if we can figure out the arguments that they now are going to be making as they take on Trump and Cruz in South Carolina and beyond. Take a look at this. Among voters who said that they wanted their next president to have experience in politics, and that was about 45% of the electorate, that was a John Kasich stronghold. 28% of them voted for Kasich, 20% for Bush, 18% for Rubio, and 14% for Cruz. If you look at those voters that said that leadership qualities was something that was important to them, more important to them than outsider status, that's 40% of the electorate. Trump won them 31%, but Kasich overperforming his number at 20%. Bush overperforming his number at 14%. And if you look at shares their values, this is really interesting. Cruz and Kasich are tied here. 21% for Kasich, 21% for Cruz, 15% for Bush, and 13% for Trump. You see some Kasich-Bush stronghold here. It's not necessarily in every category are they beating Donald Trump, but they're overperforming their vote totals there. It's the kind of areas that I think you're going to go to, and you're going to hear the importance of political experience. You're going to hear what their values are versus Donald Trump's values. You're going to hear those arguments going forward because they see that there are big chunks of vote there that they can make some inroads on Donald Trump on.
We're going to be watching South Carolina now very, very closely, and Nevada, the next contest coming up. Also coming up, how will Donald Trump run in South Carolina? That's, as I said, the next big battleground. He's already going after Ted Cruz in the state with a very, very tough new ad. How will it play with voters? We'll be right back. All right, let's get another key race alert. 81% of the vote is now in on the Republican side. Donald Trump with an impressive win, 35%. John Kasich, the Ohio governor, second place with 16%. There's a real fight underway for third place right now. Still plenty of votes out there. All of them have 11%. Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. Very, very close race for third place. Not so much for Christie. He's only at 8%. Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson, they are way down on the Republican side. We'll watch very closely this race for third place in the Republican primary in New Hampshire. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders crushing Hillary Clinton 60% to 38%, 44,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton. A very, very impressive win, a very impressive win for Bernie Sanders. Want to go back to Jake and Dana. They're in Manchester, New Hampshire, watching all of this right now. Guys, what can I say? Two political outsiders, shall we say, non-establishment, crushing the rivals in both of these contests.
An incredible night for politics, Wolf, no doubt. And one of the things, of course, that we're looking at is we're looking ahead. And we're looking at the next race, South Carolina, where they like their politics a little edgier. Famous Republican consultant Warren Tompkins once said, "We play it different down here. We're not dainty, if you get my drift." And already Donald Trump has launched a really tough ad against Ted Cruz, playing in the Palmetto State. Take a look.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
What kind of man talks from both sides of his mouth on amnesty for illegals on national television and still denies it? Who took more than $1 million in sweetheart loans from Wall Street banks and fails to disclose them as required by law? Who runs a campaign accused of dirty tricks that tried to sabotage Ben Carson with false rumors? Ted Cruz, the worst kind of Washington insider who just can't be trusted.
That's tough stuff. Of course, Ted Cruz is not one to sit back and let that happen. He released this ad earlier tonight.
Look, I got the Trump action figure. No way, it's he. What does he do? He pretends to be a Republican. I like bailouts for the banks. Too big to fail. I gave money to Pelosi, Reid, and Anthony Weiner. Hey, Hillary. I'll give you money to be my friend. Check out my house, Mr. Trump. That's a lousy house. I'm gonna take your house with eminent domain and park my limos there. Eminent domain!
We wouldn't tolerate these values in our children. Why would we want them in a president?
Well, that is the most interesting interpretation of eminent domain that I have ever seen. Dana, I have to say, we are now entering a truly new phase of the campaign. Anyone who thought it was negative before, well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
No, absolutely. And that is definitely a memorable ad that Ted Cruz has up. But I thought that the Donald Trump ad was particularly potentially devastating for a lot of reasons. But if you saw at the end there, he uses Ted Cruz's own term, which is trusted. You know, he uses the word trust and his first name in all of his ads, and he uses it on banners and so forth. Can't be trusted. I mean, he's really going straight at what Ted Cruz is selling hard to conservatives, which is, I'm really one of you. I'm out fighting for you. I'm always going to be your guy, and that's what Donald Trump
calls him a Washington insider.
Chip away at. Yep.
Very, very tough. Let's go back to Anderson in Washington at campaign headquarters.
Yeah, let's talk to some of our folks who actually have been involved with campaign commercials, like David Axelrod.
Yes, I'm a trained professional, so let me tell you that was a negative ad. Ted Cruz did.
Effective?
I think, it wasn't very subtle, it wasn't very artful, but I think it probably was effective. I think back to some of the polling going into the Iowa caucuses, and the issues that he raised in that ad were actually quite effective in that polling. Trump didn't work them very hard in Iowa. He's obviously taking a different tact in South Carolina. He's just going to go for the throat right from the start and try and keep Cruz from getting airborne here.
You know, the notion that Trump is not a conservative is something that Republicans have been saying on and on and on, and Cruz is clearly sticking to that, and he thinks it's going to work for him in South Carolina. I must say, the Trump ad was kind of vintage negative ad, right? Yeah. Circa 1960s sort of thing.
Yes.
And I think it could be effective.
Yeah, I think. Let me just say one other thing, Anderson. I'm not sure about the Cruz response. You know, it was cute, but it's sort of undocumented. It's kids making assertions. I think sometimes in this business, I can tell you that you can fall in love with your own creative, and you do things that aren't particularly effective.
Classic Cruz response. Trump goes for the throat, has unsubstantiated attacks, easily proven wrong. Cruz doesn't want to get in the mud with him and just answers it with humor. The substance of that ad, what I saw, do you want your kids to grow up with a President Trump, a guy who calls people names, who doesn't have good values, and teaches your children to act like a bully? The answer is no. So I like that ad. It worked for me as a parent. Maybe it doesn't work for other people.
Well, I think it works for me as a parent, too, because I also like negative ads that don't seem negative.
Yeah.
And it does it in a way, it delivers a message that I think is relatable to a lot of the folks that are going to be considering Trump.
Donna, what do you think?
Oh, first of all, I'm enjoying it. It's some of my best moments in politics is watching the Republican race when it gets really dirty. Of course, we go back to 2000, the Bush campaign. Of course, we Democrats go there with a little, you know.
South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina. And the Republicans, they just rip each other apart. I mean.
Democrats never do that? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean.
Bill Clinton was tossing bouquets at Bernie Sanders.
We seem like field flies compared to what you know, those bumblebees on the Republican side. No, but it's going to get really nasty. South Carolina is just this marker when you're heading down south for Republicans, going after the real conservative vote. And the notion that Donald Trump is going to allow anybody to get to his right, he's going to try to not take...
Bill, what do you think on the Democratic side? I mean, you heard from Sanders earlier tonight say they've thrown everything but the kitchen sink, and I expect the kitchen sink to be coming in very shortly.
No, well, I don't think the kitchen sink...
You know, it got a little nasty in the last week, I must say, but nothing compared to what we've seen. I mean, the Republicans call me loser, cheat, liar, you know,
there's another
criminal,
all the way down the line.
I like Donna.
You know,
really
this actually showed up in the exit polls. What you're saying, because in the exit polls, 79% of Democrats said they would be satisfied with Sanders. 62% said they'd be satisfied with Clinton. On the Republican side, the high man was Trump at 49% of Republicans saying they'd be satisfied. Cruz and Rubio, a majority said they would not be satisfied with him. They've got a big problem in their party.
Right. What really worries me going into South Carolina is, I mean, the most shocking statistic from New Hampshire for me is the fact that 2/3 of Republicans support Cruz's ban on Muslims coming to the United States. And New Hampshire is considered a Republican. Trump's ban on Muslims coming to the United States, right? And that's New Hampshire, which is considered a slightly more liberal Republican electorate than South Carolina. Given what we've already seen in this Republican race in terms of rank bigotry towards Muslim Americans, I think it's actually pretty frightening to think what we're going to see in South Carolina, where we have a history of racialized appeals.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to say, I mean, have you watched the news lately? I mean, we just had the director of national security, or excuse me, testifying in Capitol Hill, saying that ISIS is trying to infiltrate the West through refugees. I mean, this is a recognition of that, and Trump may have an extreme stance, but clearly we have to do something in terms of refugees, making sure that the right people are coming to the country. So to paint this as being racist and bigotry for people that just want to protect our country, I think is completely off the wall.
Wait a second. There are lots of things we need to do, but calling for a religious litmus test on who can come into the United States, in my view, that is bigoted. And we've seen that already in the states that are relatively tame. There's a history of things getting a lot nastier in South Carolina, and I think that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, well, can I just make a clinical point about this without, you know, I think my views are more associated with your views, but just as a clinical matter, that sort of point of view, this sort of nativism of Donald Trump, I think makes him a potent candidate. You know, we say, well, they've got a lot of evangelicals down there, but those evangelicals don't just vote on that one thing. And I think
he's
Trump
been leading among evangelicals nationwide.
Yes, and I think that he is going to hit those issues very hard because of his sense of the history of South Carolina and what he can do to motivate voters, and that is his hedge against Ted Cruz's vote among evangelicals.
Well, the number one issue for Republicans is terror and fear of terrorism, and so of course this plays into it.
Much bigger issue for Republicans than for Democrats.
Absolutely, Democrats, the economy, et cetera.
And I do think in South Carolina, Donald Trump is going to be able to tap into sort of this sense among many white Southerners that they've kind of been looked down on, that they've been forgotten, that they've been ridiculed. He will go in there and say, I mean, not quite the South will rise again, but that sort of bumper sticker message that you do see on pickup trucks all over
kind of abandoned by the GOP.
Abandoned by the GOP, abandoned by the rest of the country. This kind of
that economic nationalism plays big down there with downscale white voters who are numerous in that primary.
We got to take a quick break. Donald Trump celebrating his win tonight, obviously, talking to our Jake Tapper about the battle ahead in South Carolina and who he sees as his biggest threat. Much more of our coverage ahead.
Of a huge voter turnout, and I say we won.
This is the wow number of the night.
Oh, wow. I wanted to congratulate the other candidates, okay? Now that I got that over with.
Not whether you get knocked down that matters, it's whether you get back up.
Our disappointment tonight is not on you. It's on me.
It was a human moment for somebody who has been accused of not being human.
Tonight, the light overcame the darkness of negative campaigning. And you made it happen.
Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, both outsiders in their parties, coming out of New Hampshire tonight with huge wins, baffling the Republican and Democratic establishments. They're now trying to figure out what comes next as the candidates set their sights on South Carolina and Nevada. On the Republican side, Ohio Governor John Kasich is tonight's breakout candidate, coming in second. After holding more than 100 town halls in New Hampshire, Kasich proved he had a ground game there, but now will it play in the upcoming contest? Does he have the resources, the organization, the money to go the distance? We're watching the Republican battle for third place right now as well. Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. Each of them has had missteps. Each of them needs momentum coming out of New Hampshire. Let's take a look at a key race alert right now on the Republican side. As you can see, Donald Trump, a huge win over John Kasich, 35% to 16%, 43,720 votes ahead of Kasich with 16%. But you see that fight for third place between Cruz, Bush, and Marco Rubio. They're all at 11% right now. We're watching this closely. 84% of the vote is in. Plenty of votes out there remaining. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders had an extremely impressive win as well with 85% of the vote. He's almost 45,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire. As of right now, 60% to only 39% for Hillary Clinton. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, big wins for these two candidates.
That's right. What an unpredictable night in an already exciting and confounding political year. We have Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump in first place in their respective parties. Donald Trump, right now, has a 19 percentage point victory over his next closest competitor. That is the biggest margin of victory since John McCain won here 16 years ago. Then, of course, John Kasich, second place finish, strong, surprising. And then that tight battle for third place among Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. It has been a very eventful night.
We are going to make our country so strong. We are going to start winning again. We don't win anymore as a country. We don't win on trade. We don't win with the military. We can't beat ISIS. We don't win with anything. We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much. You are going to be so happy. We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before. I love you all. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you. We are going now to South Carolina. We're going to win in South Carolina. I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's, of course, the first-place winner, Donald Trump, declaring victory and giving a lot of his stump speech while he had the attention of the nation.
Oh, no question about it, and something that we'd heard over and listen, for somebody who has never been a politician, he gets the importance of saying the same thing, your core message, over and over and over again for it to stick, and making it very simple. Make America great again, and, you know, we're going to be winning all the time. I mean, when people think of Donald Trump now, they think of that. So why ruin a good thing?
Well, some of his opponents think of other things possibly, but those are definitely the messages he is conveying, and successfully so, especially this evening. What a strong showing, we should say, for John Kasich. A lot of people thought that maybe this was going to be his last stand. He wasn't going to finish even in the top three. Here he is in second place.
He's in second place, and, you know, he had 106 town halls here. He's a sitting governor of Ohio. He virtually moved here for the past many, many months, working very, very hard. And, you know, we talked earlier in the night about the fact that when his volunteers were making calls at the last minute, trying to convince those undecideds to come his way, that he was reaching out to independents. But the other thing that they did was they had a very detailed database of people who were leaning towards Jeb Bush, leaning towards Marco Rubio, calling them specifically and trying to pull those voters away from those competitors. And it looks like he had some success with that.
Ground game working. Let's go to the headquarters of tonight's big winner on the Republican side, Donald Trump, of course. Jim Acosta is there at Trump headquarters in Manchester. Jim, has everybody gone? What's going on at Trump headquarters?
Just about, Jake. That's right. And Donald Trump Instagrammed a picture on his way out of New Hampshire. He says he's on his way to South Carolina. And, you know, you're talking about Trump's victory tonight. I think it's interesting when Donald Trump acknowledged during his victory speech here that he's learned a lot about ground games in the last week. And he tipped his hat to Corey Lewandowski, the New Hampshire native who is the campaign manager. You know, basically saying Corey Lewandowski got it right here in New Hampshire, and perhaps Corey is now becoming a bit of a household name across the country. But you know, and if Donald Trump had not won tonight, or if it had been really close, it might have been an emperor has no clothes type of moment. Yes, he can get big crowds, but can he deliver? And he answered that question tonight definitively, no question about it. Now, in terms of what happens next, he goes to South Carolina, but get this, he's not staying in South Carolina for the next 9 or 10 or 11 days. He's going to Florida. He's going to Louisiana by the end of this week. He's continuing to go with this leapfrog strategy where he does not just focus on the state that is next on the calendar. He's bouncing around to these other states to try to tee up these other contests that are looming down the calendar. And it's an approach that was criticized last week. Remember, he was snowed out of New Hampshire, still went down to South Carolina, did that event down there. People were saying, what is he doing? He's not in New Hampshire just a few days before the New Hampshire primary. He's down in South Carolina. Well, you can't really second guess that strategy anymore. This approach of filling these arenas, filling these auditoriums, getting people whipped up into a frenzy in these small to medium-sized TV markets in the states that are on the calendar, and hope that translates into people voting come election night. I think the other thing to look for in the coming days, does he go after John Kasich? John Kasich is a threat now. He's number 2, obviously, here tonight in New Hampshire. You know, Donald Trump earlier today was praising John Kasich. I can't imagine him turning around and going after John Kasich on a dime, but we've seen him do that with Ted Cruz. And we know that Donald Trump is ready to go after Ted Cruz down in South Carolina. He sees Cruz as a big threat there. He's already got a negative ad out there on the airwaves attacking Ted Cruz. And as we know all too well over the last week, Donald Trump has a taste for attacking Ted Cruz. It's a favorite target of his, guys.
They are competing for some of the same voters, especially in South Carolina. Jim Acosta in Manchester at Trump headquarters. Thanks so much. Most of the Republican candidates are already heading to South Carolina. They'll be campaigning again just hours from now. CNN political correspondent Sarah Murray joins us now by phone. She is on board the plane of the second-place GOP finisher, Governor John Kasich. Sarah, I imagine that it is a fairly festive environment on that plane.
You know, it is pretty festive, but you would expect that someone like John Kasich, who the stakes were so high for him, it was really do or die, deliver a strong finish in New Hampshire, or there was really no way out of there. And he's not exactly bouncing off the walls. He told us in the airport as we were boarding the plane that he almost can't describe the feeling right now. It's like he can't quite believe it. He knew they had a strong ground game. He knew they had been working really hard, and they felt pretty solid that they could attain a second-place finish going into tonight. But he also told us that he's been listening to this 21 Pilots song lately. It's called Stressed Out, and he said that song has really been resonating with him yesterday, and I think it's a certain sense of relief that he feels that he is boarding this plane that is full of, his campaign staff and reporters and heading on to South Carolina. And senior staffers tell me it's not just South Carolina. They're hunkering down and deploying staffers and volunteers to 8 or 9 states that are further down the calendar. They want to stay in this for a long time, and they feel like over the next couple of months they could have picked up some delegates along the way, and that by the time you get to April 15th, they would be in a very good position to pick up big batches of delegates in places like Ohio, which is, of course, Governor Kasich's home state, the sitting governor there, or Michigan, the neighboring state. So I think what this really does is it sets up a long slog for us over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and just really muddies the establishment lane that a lot of people sort of thought might have become clearer coming out of New Hampshire.
Sarah, thank you so much. And Jake, Cassie Spodak, who's one of our intrepid embeds, just sent a video from the plane before they're going to take off to show what Sarah was just describing. And Kasich did look pretty elated in that. The only thing that I was just thinking about is the strategy that the Kasich campaign employed was what you've been mentioning, which is the McCain 2000 strategy, which is hunker down, basically live in New Hampshire for a long time and rise in the polls. He didn't win like John McCain did, but he did much better than others did because of that. And the person who he has on board, John Weaver, is a political strategist who helped John McCain do that. He kind of followed the same strategy here in New Hampshire. The question is whether or not they can continue in a way that John McCain couldn't in 2000.
Yeah, and let's bring in our executive editor, Mark Preston. And the challenge for John McCain 16 years ago was, okay, you've won moderates and independents in New Hampshire. Can you win Republicans in South Carolina? And the answer was no.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what's next? And it's interesting. The John Kasich narrative as, okay, he does well here in New Hampshire, but what's next? What's next? And Sarah's absolutely right. The whole play for Kasich is let's go to the Midwest. Let's go on my home turf. Let me talk the talk that those folks understand, and I'll be okay. The problem is that's a little bit far away, for him to do so. Although I did get a note from a top Kasich advisor and said, listen, you all are saying that we don't have a game in place. Look at the experience we have. We've won a lot of states before. We have a very good team in place. Don't count us out, which is very, very interesting. But to the point of what happens between Ted Cruz now and Donald Trump and John Kasich, and here comes Jeb Bush, and there's Marco Rubio. We now have what was going to be a definition of 3 people coming out of New Hampshire, and now we have a free-for-all, an absolute free-for-all. And I think what we're going to see is a replay of what we saw in Iowa play out in South Carolina. We're already hearing from the Cruz folks right now who are telling me that, listen, we're going to talk about the Second Amendment, we're going to talk about gay marriage, we're going to talk about pro-life, and we're going to talk about strong conservative values.
It's true, but South Carolina is different from Iowa in a lot of ways. I mean, historically, they tend, on the Republican side, to vote for the more establishment figure, despite the fact that there are a lot of evangelicals, a lot of people who would be, who would like that kind of appeal.
True, but in the way that state is broken up is that if you're going to go along the coast, that's McCain land, right? That's like Lindsey Graham land. That is more establishment type. What makes this even more interesting going into South Carolina is Henry McMaster, the lieutenant governor, who is about as establishment as old school establishment is, and he's a Trump supporter.
Except the governor, Nikki Haley, has been very, very tough on Trump and has been very, very critical of him. And as we were talking about earlier, this is a state that has a long, rich history of very, very tough politics.
Very clean politics.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. It's already people have raised their eyebrows at some of the attacks that have been made last night. Donald Trump quoted one of his members of his audience in something that is not suitable for family television. That's going to be nothing, I suspect, in a week and a half. But let's go to Anderson Cooper and our political experts back at campaign headquarters in Washington, D.C. Anderson.
Jake, Dan, and Mark, thanks very much. Let's go to our political analysts, or reporters. Can John Kasich repeat what he did in New Hampshire? I mean, he doesn't have the time to do that in South Carolina.
You know, I was just thinking about this, listening to Dana and Jake and Mark, which is Kasich prided himself on running a positive campaign, which worked for him in New Hampshire. Given what's going to go on in South Carolina, I'm not so sure you can do that, or maybe it's a way to distinguish yourself. You know, I just don't know. We just saw 2 ads a few minutes ago that Cruz and Trump are running. And Kasich ran above it in New Hampshire, but it's going to be such a fight, a cage match.
And if you are Donald Trump, do you keep going after Cruz? I mean, is that your target number one?
I think so. Yeah, I think Cruz is. I think for Trump, Cruz is more of the threat. But I think the problem with Kasich is that Jeb Bush has all of this money, right? He was using it to nuke Marco Rubio in New Hampshire, and I think now he's going to turn to try to nuke John Kasich. He hasn't had to. No one has done that to him yet, and that I think is the danger.
I was reminded watching John Kasich this morning on television talking about how he was ready to go down to South Carolina, have some jambalaya. That he hasn't spent a lot of time in South Carolina. He's got a lot of catching up to do, and his position. It isn't clear that his positioning works down there. And you've got, if there are establishment Republicans down there who have followings, who have picked their candidates. Lindsey Graham is with Jeb Bush. The other senator was with Rubio. I assume he'll stay with Rubio if the Rubio experiment is still afloat here. But it's not clear at all where the Kasich play is in South Carolina.
I mean, you can burn a message into South Carolina pretty quickly. The problem is that people have been down there burning messages in long before Kasich. Jeb Bush on the air talking about his strength in the military. Cruz obviously on the air and having a real inroads with evangelicals. And even Marco Rubio has laid some groundwork there. Jim DeMitt was a big backer for him when he ran in 2010. So I think, again, Kasich will do better than we think he would, because I think he has a good personality and sort of a folksiness that will appeal to some South Carolinians. I think at this point it's about time.
Don't forget W is going to be down there too.
Campaigning for Jeb Bush. He certainly dwelled there before. Let's turn to our political contributors. If you are Marco Rubio, he has said tonight, look, this loss was on me. What happened at the debate is never going to happen again. But the thing that was so powerful about that debate is it did sort of confirm a previous narrative that already existed, fairly or not, about Marco Rubio as a candidate, that he was repeating kind of well-rehearsed lines, that he was a soundbite machine. Is that something he can just suddenly abandon?
I worried when he said that, because he's raising expectations so high in that debate. He could potentially have not just Christie, who knows, we'll see if he makes it to that debate, but all the other candidates may just want to go finish him off. And so he made the target on his back even bigger. I don't know a guy who a campaign that prided itself on managing expectations. I think they put him sky high.
Yeah, but he has no choice, really. I mean, he really has to really change the narrative from that last debate and really have a good one here. You know, I've spent some time with Marco Rubio on the campaign trail. He was out as a very strong surrogate for Governor Romney in 2012. I've never seen anybody with an ability to work both a small room and a big room and deliver the right message like Marco Rubio.
Really?
So, yeah, and that's why it was such a dramatic departure from what many people who know him have seen on the campaign trail. He needs to get back to that where he's working off script and really he's making this about a contest for the future and start to really draw that contrast with his now most important rival, I think, in Jeb Bush. And
how is working a big room versus working, and what is the difference? Maybe this is much in the weeds, but I just find it interesting.
Well, I think in a big room, he has the ability for everybody in that room to feel as if he's talking directly to them. He does that very well when you hear him talk about tell a story about his father, the bartender, and distill a very middle-class economic message that Republicans haven't been as good at in articulating. And then in that small room, people, I think, who meet him, they come away like recognizing that he's got an incredible charisma.
Right.
And so I think that he needs to get back, and he needs to find platforms where he can start to exploit those strengths. And I think this debate, you're right, managing expectations in politics is so important, but embracing and then beating expectations is what he's going to have to do.
I would skip South Carolina and go straight to Nevada. He lived there for a while. He speaks part of the language. I'm sure he's bilingual. I would go and put all of my eggs in that basket rather than try to,
he can't
fight it out in South
The thing about that is that runs counter to his argument that he's made up to this point, which is he's the candidate that can play not just in one state and doesn't have to skip any states, but instead can compete across the broader spectrum.
But he's been claiming he'd run a 3-2-1 plan, which
he's been claiming a lot.
Right
now it's about getting momentum for Super Tuesday.
Bill, and then we got to go.
I'm just going to say, as a Democrat, I always thought of Marco Rubio as the one candidate that I would not want to run against, that he would be the strongest opponent to Hillary or to Bernie, whoever it is. And last Saturday night, he lost it for me, and I don't think he can recover. I really don't think he can recover.
We're going to talk to Donald Trump coming up, fresh off his win tonight, plus the runners-up, including Jeb Bush. Does his finish in New Hampshire give him a much-needed boost?
The pundits had it all figured out last Monday night when the Iowa caucuses were complete. They said that the race was now a three-person race between two freshman senators and a reality TV star. And while the reality TV star is still doing well, it looks like you all have reset the race, and for that I am really grateful.
Many people disappointed. I'm disappointed with tonight. I want you to understand. But I want you to understand something. I want you to understand something. Our disappointment tonight is not on you. It's on me. It's on me. I did not do well on Saturday night, so listen to this. That will never happen again. That will never happen again.
Senator Marco Rubio acknowledging he did not do well at that Republican presidential debate last Saturday night, acknowledging he had a major blunder. Let's take a look at the results as of right now. With almost 90% of the vote in, Donald Trump, a huge winner in New Hampshire with 35% of the vote. He's almost 50,000 votes ahead of John Kasich, who comes in second, the Ohio governor, with 16%. Look at this battle underway, though, for third place between Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. They're all at 11%. Ted Cruz slightly ahead of Jeb Bush, Bush ahead of Marco Rubio. Christie very disappointed, coming in at sixth place with 8%. Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson down below. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders with a very impressive win over Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire on the Democratic primary, 60% of the vote. 45,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton. She gets only 39% of the vote. I want to go to CNN senior political reporter Manu Raju. He's over at Rubio headquarters. It's pretty unusual for Rubio to acknowledge that mistake he made at the debate may have cost him a much better position in New Hampshire.
Absolutely. Well, particularly after that debate performance, the Rubio campaign and the senator himself have been saying that they were actually okay. They felt pretty good about the performance. They really blamed the media for making a big deal out of it. But it's really been what a whirlwind week, Wolf, for Marco Rubio. I mean, we came here out of the Iowa caucuses with a head of steam, a lot of energy, and then just now he made that admission that, he's very disappointed at what happened here. And there was really not much energy in the room, and folks really hightailed out of here immediately after that concession speech. But now we'll have to look to see what changes, if any, Marco Rubio makes to his strategy going forward. We'll have a chance to talk to him on his campaign plane tomorrow morning as he goes to South Carolina and continues his campaign there. But one thing that we do know, we're anticipating a pretty intense fight between Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio going forward. Jeb Bush circulating talking points to his supporters earlier, saying right after the results came in, saying that tonight's results show that Marco Rubio had lost momentum and that he's completely unprepared for it to be the Republican nominee. And I also spoke to the Rubio spokesman, Alex Conant, who said to me, the longer that Jeb Bush stays in this race, the more likely it is that Donald Trump will become the Republican nominee. So you can see this fight building and growing between Rubio and Bush to claim that establishment alternative, assuming, however, that John Kasich does not do well. in South Carolina, and also Ted Cruz is a threat as well. This race is just muddled, but Bush and Rubio have targets on each other's back, Wolf.
They certainly do, and you can see how important those presidential debates are as a result of what happened to Marco Rubio in that last presidential debate. Let's go to CNN Sunlen Serfati. She's over at Cruz headquarters in New Hampshire as well. Cruz, as of right now, with 89% of the vote, Sunlen in. He's at 12%, slightly ahead of Jeb Bush.
That's right, Wolf, and I can tell you it's a much different tone here within the Cruz campaign world than it is at Marco Rubio's tonight. The Cruz campaign is thrilled with this battle for third that's going on for a few reasons. They feel that they beat expectations here in New Hampshire. They feel like they've largely come out of New Hampshire unscathed, but equally important is they feel that Marco Rubio is coming out of this state damaged, and this will be a key part of their message going forward because they think it cuts into the very core of Marco Rubio's message that he is the candidate that can be the alternative to Donald Trump, that he is the candidate that can coalesce the establishment wing of the party to form against Donald Trump. And if he doesn't, and they feel that tonight's win really hit at that message and really took an air out of the tires of that message, that can benefit Ted Cruz in the end. Now, Ted Cruz did give Donald Trump a call tonight conceding the race. He has called Donald Trump's win here impressive, but I have to tell you, when Ted Cruz took the stage shortly after, it was much more a victory speech than it was a concession speech. Cruz saying that they really defied expectations and proved the naysayers wrong, and this will be a part of his message going into South Carolina going forward. And he made clear tonight he intends to bring the heat against Donald Trump and Marco Rubio strongly, made him not so veiled jabs at both of them here tonight. Wolf?
All right, Sunlen Serfati over at Cruz headquarters. Thanks very much. I want to go to Athena Jones. She's over at Jeb Bush headquarters for us right now. He's slightly behind Ted Cruz, still 11% of the vote outstanding. What's been the reaction over there, Athena?
Hi, Wolf. Well, you heard Sunlen say that the Cruz campaign is happy with his third place, possibly fourth place finish in this race. Well, the Bush camp also sees this as a win. They're in a fight right now for a third place, but third place, fourth place, they're painting this as a win given how far Bush has come. He was written off, counted out. Now he's back in the conversation, and they believe he's the best positioned to head into South Carolina. They say that they're very well organized in that state. He should compete well, better with evangelicals, for instance, than he did in Iowa. I spoke with Chief Strategist David Kochel, who told me that the military population, military and former military population of voters in South Carolina will be beneficial to Bush, who has laid out a plan, for instance, to defeat ISIS. And so they're excited about how they've ended up tonight. Bush is already on the plane to Hilton Head, South Carolina, where he'll hold his first event tomorrow. And they say that they're very well organized there. They've had 20-plus staffers in the state, and that they've made hundreds of thousands of phone calls between staffers and volunteers and door knocking. So they say that they are ready to compete in South Carolina. That's also where we expect to see Bush get some help from his brother, George W. Bush. Wolf?
Athena, thanks very much. Anderson, no doubt there's a fight going on for third place, but there's no doubt about who crushed everyone else and is in first place.
That's true. Donald Trump doing extremely well. And again, I mean, to Jake Tapper's point earlier, who would have thunk it 6 months ago, Donald Trump and Senator Sanders both winning the New Hampshire primary. This battle for third place, how much advantage does Bush have, given the amount of money that they have already spent, given the organization they have on the ground there, compared to Cruz, compared to Rubio, and certainly to Kasich, who doesn't really seem to have much of a ground game?
I think Cruz has organization in the South. He spent a lot of his August on a bus tour throughout the South. He was planning to run in the South, clearly looking at these exit polls tonight as the candidate who shares my values. Cruz and Kasich tied tonight in New Hampshire, but Cruz is becoming the values candidate to a great degree in the Republican Party. So, you know, I think it's a very hospitable terrain for him, and I think Jeb is declaring himself the comeback kid tonight to a great degree. He's got a lot of organization. He's got his brother, who's very popular in the Republican Party right now. And, you know, this fight between Jeb and Rubio is kind of Shakespearean. You know, he was Rubio's mentor, and now they're out to destroy each other, literally. And in Bush's talking points tonight, he said that Rubio has been exposed as completely unprepared to be president, period.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, talking to some establishment Republicans down there, they very much want their reputation back for South Carolina, right? South Carolina has picked the winner every time on the GOP side, except for last time going with Newt Gingrich. So I do think there's going to be kind of a coalescing, trying to figure out who is the best establishment candidate down there to go up against Donald Trump, unless, as you said, Donald Trump is that establishment.
At some point, that could be the case. But I think you're looking at establishment smackdown 2. Yeah. Right? This is another episode of what we saw here in New Hampshire. And I think you're going to see Bush, you know, he still has that super PAC, and that super PAC is still well armed. And I expect that both Rubio and Kasich may be the recipients of some.
You also had pointed out, David, during the break to me that Marco Rubio had gone after Christie.
Well, yeah, you know, you say Bush and Rubio are Shakespearean, but there's a kind of a Sopranos theme here as well, which is that Rubio went after Christie and really took him down with negative media at the front of at the beginning of this year, and it's sort of the you take one of mine, I'm going to take one of yours sort of thing.
Right.
And Christie took Rubio out tonight.
Right.
Yeah. You know, we're all under the assumption that someone will emerge from this establishment lane. That's not a foregone conclusion. One of the problems is going to be money. You know, Kevin was talking about how big an issue money is. Cruz has a lot of money. Rubio's fundraising maybe stalls now a little bit. I don't know, there are a lot of new people giving money to Jeb Bush. Kasich is not a huge fundraiser. And although we think about Donald Trump as only in this one lane, the amazing thing about the New Hampshire results, he tied for first among voters who support amnesty for illegal immigrants, right? He won New Hampshire even
on both sides of that issue.
I mean, New Hampshire is a very highly educated state. What we knew about Donald Trump, we thought, was that he only does well amongst non-college educated voters. He did well even in New Hampshire. So he may not be as confined to one lane as people want to think.
I want to talk to our political contributors coming up, but first we've got to take a break. Still ahead, what does Donald Trump think was the secret to his success tonight? Talk to him next.
We are going now to South Carolina. We're going to win in South Carolina. I love you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really commanding wins tonight for Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders in the New Hampshire primaries, giving each of these outsiders new momentum as all the candidates now set their sights on the next contest in South Carolina, Nevada, and beyond. The Ohio Governor, John Kasich, the Republican candidate to watch tonight, he came in second thanks to a strong New Hampshire campaign. Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio, they're battling it out for third right now. Let's take a look at the numbers. With 90% of the vote now counted, Donald Trump, very impressive, almost 90,000 votes. John Kasich in second place with about 40,000 votes, 35% to 16%. But take a look at this fight for third place right now. Still 10% of the vote out there, 12% for Ted Cruz, 11% for Jeb Bush, 10% for Marco Rubio, Christie, everybody else in single digits. But if you look at Donald Trump, almost 50,000 votes ahead of the number 2, John Kasich, 60,000 votes ahead of Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush. Very, very impressive for Donald Trump in New Hampshire. Let's take a look at the Democratic side. Similarly, Bernie Sanders, the independent senator from Vermont, 60% of the vote, almost 50,000 votes ahead of Hillary Clinton, 39%, 89% of the vote counted in New Hampshire. Very impressive on both sides. Let's go back to Jake and Dana in Manchester for us right now. Guys, what can you say? As you've been pointing out, all of us have been pointing out, who would have thought only a few months ago Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders would not only win, but would crush the rivals in both in New Hampshire?
Quite a momentous evening. Shortly after Donald Trump's win, I spoke with him, and I began by asking him if he ever thought this day, this win, was really ever going to happen.
Well, it's been a really wonderful evening, Jake. And, you know, I thought it might, but I didn't know by these numbers. And I was so happy. I just looked at your report, and it was right across the board with men, with women, with young, with old, with, you know, everything. And to win every single category was perhaps the greatest honor of all.
And it looks like, obviously, the voting results are still coming in, but it looks like this is the biggest victory in a Republican primary since George W. Bush lost to John McCain in New Hampshire 16 years ago. How does it feel?
Well, I didn't know that number. That's a long time. That's a great feeling to know that it's been that big of a victory. But it's a lot of years. But I will tell you, it's just an honor to have won. As you know, I told you if I win by one vote, I'll be happy. But this makes me even happier. I will say that, Jake.
It's by a bit more than one vote. So if you look at the exit polls, you'll see that voters were looking for an outsider. They're mad at the Republican establishment. What do you think in particular about your message resonated with the voters of New Hampshire?
Well, I think it started with trade and the fact that we're being just ripped off by everybody, whether it's China, Japan, Mexico. And I think it really ended up being very much borders and security and other things having to do with security. And then you have the migration and you have ISIS, and all of a sudden it morphed into that. And I think because of the fact that I had done so well with the border and done so well with the wall, which will be built, I think what happened is people started saying that I would also be the best with respect to ISIS and some of the outer problems that we have. So it seems that the whole security thing, the military thing, the fact that I'm going to take care of the vets far better than anybody else will be able to, it all sort of came down to that. But it seems like pretty much of a victory in every category. And, of course, the easiest thing of all for me is going to be trade and jobs, because that's really what I do.
In terms of how you won in New Hampshire, did you pay more attention, did your campaign pay more attention to the ground game, to getting your voters to the polls, to making sure that they were motivated, as opposed to the approach of big rallies?
Well, I think the ground game was very strong, and I tell you, we really focused on it after Iowa. You know, the ground game was not something I was extremely familiar with, but I learned quickly. Otherwise, the voters wouldn't like me too much. And I think you know, I learned very well, and we have a very good ground game. And, you know, the people of New Hampshire are amazing people. And now I'm going to South Carolina, and I think we're going to have tremendous success there. We were just there, and I had 12,000 people in a wonderful, wonderful arena. And to be honest with you, the ground game was very important to me, and I think we really learned about ground games very quickly.
As you may know, South Carolina, they like their politics a little bit more rough and tumble. Are you ready for what may come your way, the negative attacks and perhaps even dirty tricks that might happen in the Palmetto State?
Well, we've already had dirty tricks in this campaign, so, you know, I'm ready for whatever they want to throw at me, and that's fine. I mean, we've had a lot of dirty tricks in this campaign, but, you know, I want to congratulate everybody that's run. They're all very capable people, and it was an honor to run against them, and now I'll see them in a little while. Like, tomorrow, I'll be around 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be in South Carolina getting ready, and that should be interesting. I love South Carolina. I mean, the people are, I've been there many, many times, and the people are tremendous people, and I think I can do very well there.
There's a big competition, obviously, for second place and third place in New Hampshire right now. Who do you think is your competition going forward? Is it Ted Cruz? Do you see some rejuvenation for Jeb Bush and John Kasich? Who are you focused on?
I see them all, Jake. I really see them all. I think, you know, they're all good competitors and talented people. And, you know, right now it looks like Kasich has a little bit of a lead. But the other way, I'm just looking at your chart. Yep, it's getting a little bit closer. It's going to be a close race, I think. And you sort of predicted that, and so did CNN and the whole group. It looks like it's going to be a pretty close race for second.
Lastly, you've been campaigning more with your family, your wife Melania, your boys Don and Eric. How are they taking the news? This is a big night in Trump family history.
Well, they're very proud. Melania's standing with me right now, and Don and Eric and Ivanka. Corey's right outside, who's done a terrific job. And I was, in fact, he just walked in now, so I will comment on his ground game, which was excellent. But it's been an amazing period of time, and we're all thrilled. And we want to make America great again. It's very simple. We're going to make America great again.
Well, congratulations on a very strong win in New Hampshire. Best of luck to you. We'll see you out there on the campaign trail, Mr. Trump.
Thank you very much, Jake. You take care of yourself. Thank you.
it's still, I think, sinking in for everybody that this man who has never run a campaign before, never been a politician, never been a candidate, just won, as you said, so handily in the New Hampshire primary, which is not an easy feat. I loved how he was talking to you about the ground game, how he was just kind of getting basically his political sea legs.
Learning it, yeah.
And learning it, and it was clear, and he admitted that they didn't do the greatest job of that in Iowa, but it was quite different here.
You know, for months, the Republican establishment in Washington and elsewhere was convinced that Donald Trump was going to implode.
That's right.
There was no way his popularity could last. He was saying so many outrageous things. Surely this was going to end. And for months, you and I have been speaking about this, and I have seen no evidence that he can be stopped, that he won't get the nomination. I hope that the Republican establishment is realizing that this man is here to stay, and they need to reckon with him one way or another.
Yeah, well, they probably are. They're trying to, at least, and I think that part of the reason why they're quite concerned tonight is because all of their potential candidates who were in that cluster for second, third place, you know, it was sort of a circular firing squad.
And even their second place finisher, John Kasich, still, his score was twice. Donald Trump beat it by, he lapped him.
Exactly.
16% to, what is it, 35%.
And voters really wanted somebody from outside the establishment, outside of politics, and that's what they chose.
Well, Flitzer, back to you in Washington.
All right, guys, thanks very much. It wasn't even close. 50,000 votes. He beat Kasich in New Hampshire, Donald Trump, by 50,000 votes, and they're still counting the votes. John King, 91% of the vote is now in, but it's not even close in New Hampshire. Trump really did something amazing tonight.
It's not. And as we zoom in on those results, let's first remind people, 1, 2. We got 48 more to go in a Republican race that looks like it's going to go on for a while. Ted Cruz won Iowa, anti-establishment, Tea Party guy. Now Donald Trump, the biggest disruptive force in American politics, anti-Republican establishment. Even though he's picking up a lot of establishment votes, wins, as Jake just said. This is more than 2 to 1, 91,000 votes. Sometimes it's hard to explain. This is not hard to explain. The dark red is Donald Trump. Take a look at the map. He won from the north to the south. He won on the seacoast. He won along the Connecticut River on the Vermont border. You see a little more than a half dozen towns going to John Kasich. That's the brown. One town goes to Jeb Bush. One town up here goes to Ted Cruz. There are a few more we're still waiting for, but we're up at 91% of the vote. We know Trump's going to win big. We know Kasich has a second place that he calls solid. Still a big gap between number 1 and number 2. Here's the interesting battle. Looks pretty good at this point that Ted Cruz is going to hold on here. Mathematically, still possible for Bush to get here. Marco Rubio has done something significant. A very disappointing night for Rubio. But in the last few minutes, if this holds, he has gone from just below 10% to now at 11%. You need 10% in New Hampshire to be in play for delegates. So he's moved up a little bit there, but we'll count these as we get to the bottom. Again, Cruz looks like he's going to hold on to third place, but we got a little bit more math to do.
Certainly do, and it's very impressive. He didn't just win the rural areas, Donald Trump. He won the urban areas all over the state. He swept that state pretty decisively. All right, stand by. Coming up, the Democrats. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, what to expect as they head to South Carolina.
Because of a huge voter turnout, and I say huge, we won. Because we harness the energy and the excitement that the Democratic Party will need to succeed in November.
We also have to break through the barriers of bigotry. African American parents shouldn't have to worry that their children will be harassed, humiliated, even shot because of the color of their skin.
Hillary Clinton talking tonight at her speech, and we also obviously heard from Senator Sanders. She's clearly telegraphing ahead to South Carolina, where the electorate is a lot more diverse and where she believes that is a great strength for her.
I believe she's telegraphing not just to South Carolina, but to Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and other places where she can accumulate delegates. That's her strategy. There's no question that African-American voters are very pro-democratic, and in Democratic primaries, especially one like this, African-American delegates can really help to shape the race in the month of March, where 56% of all delegates are chosen.
Bill, how significant, Ben Jealous, former head of the NAACP, has now endorsed Senator Sanders, Dr. Cornel West. Jeff Weaver cites some other prominent African-American leaders. Do you believe that Sanders can make inroads against Hillary Clinton?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There'll be the others come along, too. He doesn't have to win South Carolina. But, I think he's shown... Look, Hillary was adjusting her message tonight to show I'm moving forward and I'm really addressing an African-American community. I think what we've seen with Bernie is that Bernie has a message that he doesn't have to change this message. He's not going to change this message. He's been preaching this economic populism, this national appeal. It includes criminal justice reform. It includes police department reform. He talks about those things, and I think he can take that message nationwide. I think
he also
the reality is
racial inequality to economic inequality.
Yes, that resonates across the field. I think that we see tonight that there are, again, two strong candidates going forward, both well-funded. There are some reports tonight, Tad Devine is saying that the Sanders campaign may actually have more money, end up with more money than Hillary does, because she's been hemorrhaging money in New Hampshire, for example, and got nothing for it.
Hillary's campaign, and by the way, I just have to state for the record, I'm neutral. Not as neutral as, my brother over there, Mr. Axelrod, but I'm neutral. So I don't want you, just because I'm sitting next to this one handsome man, and see, I'm getting to that moment. I got 1 hour, so I gotta start picking on somebody here.
Baby,
I'm just sorry. Somebody
gotta come back at you.
You might give me some more energy. But look, I think I know a little bit about black voters. I think I know a lot about all voters, but black voters want to be courted. They want candidates to address all of the issues, not just criminal justice reform or police brutality, but they want to talk about economic justice issues and environmental justice issues. After all, that's what Flint is about. They also want to talk about health care and war and peace issues. So I think it's very important that these candidates go into these upcoming states and engage these voters, because if you don't engage them, they won't turn out. If they don't turn out, what's the point? And Hillary Clinton has been spending time, has been spending resources, but lately, I was in South Carolina recently. Bernie Sanders has an operation in South Carolina.
Yeah.
He's spending money, not just to try to get them out, but to bring them on board his campaign.
I think we're both saying this.
Point out that Nevada is actually an intervening event, and that is a caucus, and that is a place where the Sanders campaign thinks they can win. And they've increased their buy there. They've sent a bunch of people there. And if I were the Clinton campaign, the first thing I'd do is button down Nevada. Because you don't want more momentum going into the South.
Nevada's obviously first for the Democrats. South Carolina's first for the GOP. Still ahead. It was a night for the outsiders, but can they hold the momentum into the next big contest? Details ahead.
The people want real change.
If you don't have a seatbelt, go get one.
Who would have thunk it 6 months ago? Donald Trump and Senator Sanders both winning the New Hampshire primary.
We learned a lot about ground games in 1 week, I have to tell you that.
Your victory tonight has left the Washington cartel utterly terrified.
What an unpredictable night in an already exciting and confounding political year.
You are the reason we are here, and you are the reason we are going to win the nomination and then win this election together. Thank you all.
The outsiders, they've scored stunning runaway victories in the New Hampshire primary. Republican billionaire Donald Trump and Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders shaking up the establishments of their respective parties, setting the stage for battles ahead in South Carolina, Nevada, and beyond. Sanders trouncing Hillary Clinton by more than 20 points. Both Democrats say their fight, though, will go national right now. A political novice. Just a few months ago, Trump captured the GOP contest in New Hampshire by close to 20 points as well after faltering in Iowa. Just barely, though. Ohio Governor John Kasich, he came in second place tonight in New Hampshire, separating himself from the pack of Republicans desperate for tickets out of New Hampshire. But can he go the distance with votes still being counted? Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, they are, as of right now, still in a tight battle for third place. With a 6th place finish, on the other hand, Governor Christie of New Jersey says he's heading back to New Jersey to, quote, take a deep breath, but he has not dropped out. Meantime, the rest of the field will already be pounding the trail in South Carolina just hours from now. Let's go to CNN political director David Chalian and CNN politics executive editor Mark Preston. We're going to Mark Preston first. He's joining us from Manchester right now. You're getting some new information on Marco Rubio. Mark, what are you learning?
Well, Wolf, we just learned in the last 30 minutes now, Marco Rubio has sent out a fundraising email where he's acknowledging that he dropped the ball during that debate on Saturday night, that devastating debate where Christie really took him to the mat. Now, Marco Rubio trying to raise money, but also telling his supporters that he will never, ever let that happen again. Marco Rubio in the past has made some pretty big mistakes. The whole water incident, Wolf, if you remember, he had reached over and grabbed water during the Republican response to the State of the Union. He was successful raising money off of that, but this is more serious at this critical time. But he says he is going on to South Carolina. Wolf, Marco Rubio not giving up, even though he is a disappointing 6th place finish.
Yeah, publicly acknowledging now that he did blunder in that debate last Saturday night. David Chalian, you're getting some more information, too, on these Republican candidates and how it all unfolded tonight.
Well, Wolf, that's right. What Mark just said is so true about Rubio obviously continuing on to South Carolina. I think what you're seeing in that very muddled middle there of Bush and Kasich and Cruz and Rubio out of New Hampshire, what you're seeing is a contest that's going to go on for a while. And if you look at the vote totals tonight, I find this fascinating. Add Trump and Cruz's number together, the outsider lane, you get to 47%. Add Kasich, Bush, Rubio, and Christie together, the more establishment lane, you're at 45%. There's a basic tie going on in these two factions within the Republican Party with no clear directive here. Obviously, Trump catapults out of New Hampshire with a very big victory, but this whole establishment lane is still so crowded and everyone taking a slice of the vote that it seems to me that there's no clarity here. This is going to continue for quite some time.
And Mark Preston, I want to go back to you over there. You're in New Hampshire. Everybody's now getting ready for South Carolina and Nevada, and some of the candidates are even looking beyond to Super Tuesday and all those other contests. This is going to go on for quite a while.
It is. And look, South Carolina is a very interesting state. In some ways, it is going to be like a replay of Iowa. Ted Cruz's folks are telling me right now that he is going to play it hard to the evangelical vote. That tends to be in the upstate. He's going to be talking about his Second Amendment support for gun rights, how he's going to talk about gay marriage, how he's going to talk about family values. At the same time, though, as David just said, you're going to see Jeb Bush and John Kasich battling it out in some ways with Marco Rubio for that more centrist Republican type that we see in South Carolina. And, of course, the big question is, Donald Trump, who has come out of here with an unbelievable victory here in New Hampshire. He's won by so much, but is that enthusiasm here in New Hampshire going to carry over into South Carolina? And right now, Wolf, we don't know the answer to that.
You know, it's interesting, as we're watching all of this, for so many of the Republicans, the night seems to have breathed some new life into their campaigns. Listen to this.
We are going to make America great again.
Hillary, you just needed this much and head to South Carolina because it ain't working here.
The real winner is the conservative grassroots.
I did not do well on Saturday night, so listen to this. That will never happen again.
There's so much going to happen. If you don't have a seatbelt, go get one.
I love you all. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you. We are going now to South Carolina. We're going to win in South Carolina. I love you all. Thank you very much.
David Chalian, here's the question, though. He comes in second, the Ohio Governor John Kasich, impressive second place, but does he have the ability now, really the resources, the money, the staff, the opportunity to do better in South Carolina and Nevada, some of these upcoming states not necessarily all that conducive to him.
Well, I think I've already seen 3 fundraising appeals from the Kasich campaign in the last couple of hours hit my inbox. Obviously, he's going to get a positive news cycle here and get coverage for his big second-place showing. John Kasich has already announced that he's going to spend 2 days next week, the week of the South Carolina Republican primary, in Michigan. Michigan votes March 8th. John Kasich is already looking ahead at sort of where the delegates are available and sort of thinking he's going to plant a flag in places like Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. The problem is there's a lot of time between now and March 8th. So if he's able to raise the money off of this second-place showing tonight, if he's able to show that he still has life in South Carolina, perhaps he can build something. But my God, to go from here and think you're going to automatically be in a position to post good showings in March 8th and March 15th states, you got to be able to keep some life in you between now and then.
There's no doubt, though, Mark, he's going to get some big money now as a result of his second-place finish in New Hampshire. A lot of those establishment Republicans, they've always liked John Kasich. No Republican has ever been elected president of the United States without carrying Ohio.
Well, certainly, and we'll see how much money comes out of Ohio, you know, in many ways a very wealthy state. Also, John Kasich has ties to Wall Street, so it'll be interesting to see if he will start to see some of that centrist money, some of that really business money come his way. Now, John Kasich up here really put in hard spade work to win New Hampshire. The question is, does he have that same type of infrastructure built down in South Carolina and onward? Now, Wolf, John Kasich, his type of politics played very well up here in New Hampshire. Last night when I was up at Dixville Notch, I was talking to one of the first voters in the nation who said that he had met John Kasich about 8 months ago, and his advice to Kasich was, go directly at Hillary, you need to go negative. And Kasich said, listen, that's not my type of politics, I'm not going to do that. About 7 months later, he saw Kasich again. Kasich actually went up to this northernest part of New Hampshire, held a town meeting with 60 people. They all came together. He talked to him again, and he said, you know what? You were right. You were right to do this, and he ended up going on and voting for him. And I think that's what you saw all across the state here in New Hampshire. Is that going to reflect on how he does in South Carolina? Again, we don't know, but I think that all this talk over the past week from all of us that this would turn into a 3-person race has really turned into a 5-person race right now, Wolf.
Certainly has, and there's a Republican presidential debate coming up Saturday night as well. We'll see what happens there. Anderson, lots to assess right now.
Yeah, I want to talk to our panel of analysts. I mean, we keep talking about lanes, who's in the establishment lane.
Right.
Are there lanes anymore? Do lanes exist?
I think the lanes are going to have to start to meld at a certain point. And I think if you look at these numbers that David was just talking about, at a certain point, the establishment's going to have to figure out what it wants to do, and it may have to adopt Donald Trump because he's got 35% of the vote here. He looks like a winner in many places in the South, and if you can't beat him, you're going to have to adopt
But I mean,
him.
there's a lot of establishment Republicans who don't believe Donald Trump, you know, really is enough of a Republican.
Right, but they believe he's malleable. They believe he's more malleable than a Ted Cruz,
I mean, they
for
really
example.
can't stand Ted Cruz.
Right.
And the fact is that they may have to make a choice between a punch in the nose and a knee to the groin. You know?
Because none of the other so-called establishment candidates are willing to drop out
through. But, you know, one thing I think, you know, Trump had a good night, and we ought to give it to him. But he got a third of the Republican vote tonight. He's polling about a third of the vote everywhere. It's not clear to me where his ceiling is, and he may hit a ceiling at some point. And as the field narrows, that could be problematical. The question is just whether it's Ted Cruz who takes advantage of that or someone else.
And they could limp along
But one
like
point I want to make, one final point I want to make, this discussion about John Kasich. He just spent 8 months essentially working New Hampshire.
Right.
Now these things come in rapid-fire succession. They're basically major media events, and so he can't do what he did in New Hampshire, and I think that's going to be a big problem for him.
Just in terms of ad buzz, it's a lot different, isn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, I think, first of all, it becomes very expensive, as Kevin mentioned earlier, but you just don't have time to touch people the way you did in New Hampshire. That kind of campaigning works in Iowa, works in New Hampshire, doesn't work going forward.
I think what's interesting is, you know, one of the things that this term establishment lane, I think, misses is that there's actually a real ideological divide between Kasich and Rubio. They have responded very differently to Donald Trump. Rubio essentially has mimicked Donald Trump. He's talked a lot about how Barack Obama wants to destroy America. He hasn't really defended the idea that there should be a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. One of the things that's interesting in the exit polling is that Kasich ends up winning people who support a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, or at least tying with Trump. He also wins people who oppose the ban on Muslims coming to the United States. So I think one of the things we saw is that Kasich was able to create, in a way, his own lane, not just an establishment lane, but an actual moderate lane.
It's a good general election strategy.
It's a good, right? It may not win him. It may not win the primary because New Hampshire is an unusual state.
I'm sure South Carolina is opening its arms to that.
Right. That's why he has to rely on states like Massachusetts, which will be voting on March 1st. But there's an important ideological difference in where he has gone and where Rubio has gone.
We should also point out, though, that Trump and Rubio are both running ads already in South Carolina, some against each other. I want to show both of those ads, the Trump and the Rubio ad. Let's take a look and talk about it.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. What kind of man talks from both sides of his mouth on amnesty for illegals on national television and still denies it? Who took more than $1 million in sweetheart loans from Wall Street banks and fails to disclose them as required by law? Who runs a campaign accused of dirty tricks that tried to sabotage Ben Carson with false rumors? Ted Cruz, the worst kind of Washington insider who just can't be trusted.
And then there's also the ad that Cruz is running against Trump, which is deploying more of a sense of humor. Let's take a look.
Look, I got the Trump action figure. No way, it's he. What does he do? He pretends to be a Republican. I like bailouts for the banks. Too big to fail. I gave money to Pelosi, Reid, and Anthony Weiner. Hey, Hillary. I'll give you money to be my friend. Check out my house, Mr. Trump. That's a lousy house. I'm gonna take your house with eminent domain and park my limos there. Eminent domain!
We wouldn't tolerate these values in our children. Why would we want them in a president?
It's interesting because tonight Trump was saying to Jake that, well, he wasn't willing to name whether it was Cruz as his main opponent or not. He was saying, well, I'm looking at all of them, but clearly he's running ads against Cruz.
Yeah, Cruz is clearly his main competition down there right now, and particularly on the question of resources. Cruz is the one candidate that's probably in the best position to take Donald Trump on with an air war versus just having the earned media fight that you've seen. That's one of the things that has happened in New Hampshire was that not many, all these other campaigns, whether it was Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio or whoever, they didn't take on Donald Trump in a very broad and sustained way. Right. Someone's going to have to do that now. The person best positioned to do that is Ted Cruz.
And when they did take on, it was normally not from a position of strength. I mean, it was some of the ones, it was Bobby Jindal, it was others who were trying to get attention.
It was a reflexive tactic on their part rather than one that was a proactive one.
There really has to be, and I think Cruz is trying to do this with this ad, to define Donald Trump for what he is. He is the toddler in the corner that throws a tantrum when he doesn't get his way. Other people have tried to take him on by using the kind of same tactics. You know, Bush was calling him a loser and a whiner and things like that. That's not going to work. You have to put Donald Trump in the box that he can't get out of, and I think that adds a good start.
Here's the advantage that Donald Trump has here, too, is he is much more fully defined in the eyes of many voters. Sure. And the risk for Ted Cruz here is that because he's not as defined, new information like that about immigration or past positions or the dirty tricks against Ben Carson, that puts him puts him in a very vulnerable position with a lot of voters.
Amanda, let's ask a question about do you think that Ted Cruz will be willing to take Donald Trump on in a debate? Because he had a chance in the last debate to go at him. He was invited to do it, and he kind of pulled up short.
Yeah, the timing has to be right. You know, I played softball. Sometimes you don't take the pitch. If you pick your pitches, you have to wait for the timing to be right. You have to wait for that moment. You have to lay the groundwork on things like eminent domain and that he supports touchback amnesty, so the voters are primed for that attack. Ted Cruz
he said
right.
The question was, you said that Donald Trump doesn't have the temperament to have his finger on the button. He said it, and then he was asked, would you say that to him now? And he didn't.
Here's where the
timing is right. He didn't want to have the fight in
here's
Hampshire.
Where the time.
South Carolina.
Well, here's where the time. Well, that's where the timing.
South Carolina's going to happen.
That's where the timing is right. If you don't take Donald Trump on now, with the head of steam that he has coming out of New Hampshire, if he wins South Carolina and goes into those March 1 states with that head of steam,
quick point. I just want to say, first of all, on the two ads, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but if you're going to be dirty and negative, you got to be dirty and negative right in your face. I think the Trump ad's a lot more effective than the Cruz ad. It's just too cute for me. But I just want to say a word about the forgotten man tonight, me of all people to say, Jeb Bush had to keep himself alive tonight.
Yes.
He really worked hard in New Hampshire, and he managed to do it. He'd rather be third than fourth. He may still end up being third, and he's got the money. He's still going to be, and he's going to have his brother in South Carolina.
How interesting.
He's going to have an organization. Yeah. So I'm just saying, he could end up being the alternative to Trump and Cruz.
And also, how interesting to have his brother now out on the campaign trail when early on in the campaign, you know, he sort of waffled on exactly what to say about his brother, what to say about
Jeb Bush is still alive.
He had his mother. And Jeb Bush spent $36 million to come in, what, third place, fourth place? And I'm sure he's spending a substantial amount to win in South Carolina. I think of all of the candidates that I've watched on the Republican side, Jeb Bush seemed to be the only one willing to take Donald Trump on. But here's my pro-Donald Trump moment. Don't put up. You can't take him on. His voters like him. I don't think you got to let him fail at it.
But hope's not a strategy. And one of the ways in that lane to consolidate the voters who believe that Donald Trump is not only a threat to the party but the country is to confront him and win. You can't run from Donald Trump in this race.
And I think the other point,
his voters are with him.
There is a model for doing this. It's what Ted Cruz did in Iowa. Ted Cruz was able in Iowa to sow a lot of concern among more conservative evangelical voters about the fact that Donald Trump really isn't one of them.
We got to do that again. We got to take another break.
Went to the voters.
Coming up, he's in a tight battle for third place. We were just talking about him, Jeb Bush, declaring himself this year's comeback kid.
This campaign is not dead. We're going on to South Carolina.
I want to congratulate Donald Trump on an impressive win tonight. And John Kasich had a good night tonight. But the real winner is the conservative grassroots. Who propelled us to an outright victory in Iowa and to a far stronger result and outcome in New Hampshire than anyone had predicted.
All eyes now on South Carolina, the next battleground for the Republican presidential candidates. They're fanning out across the state just a few hours from now, and in the coming days ahead of the state's GOP primary. That happens a week from Saturday. Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush, they're still fighting tonight for third place in New Hampshire. Rubio will campaign part of the day in South Carolina, but both he and Cruz will also be in Washington for a vote on new sanctions against North Korea. Rubio, in particular, has been slammed by his rivals for missing Senate votes while campaigning for president of the United States. Let's go to CNN Sunlit Srifati. She's over at Cruz headquarters for us right now in New Hampshire with more on the Cruz reaction. Sunlit.
Well, Ted Cruz tonight already trying to raise the stakes in South Carolina. In a fundraising email to supporters, Ted Cruz saying South Carolina will be the tipping point going forward in this race. Very clear that the Cruz campaign wants to make South Carolina their breakout moment in this race. They feel very well positioned in that state. They have invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of groundwork. They have invested well. And they also, of course, feel that South Carolina is a state that favors Ted Cruz, a large evangelical population, a very good, a big amount of conservative Republicans in that state. It's all things that favors Ted Cruz. Now, tonight in that concession speech of Ted Cruz, which is actually sounded more like a victory speech, he gave a nod to that point. He said Washington liberals may find South Carolina far less hospitable environs, and he really telegraphed the argument that he's going to bring on the South Carolina ground against Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, really trying to tie both of them to Hillary Clinton, really kryptonite among Republicans. Very clear that the message he will bring is that these other candidates are campaign conservatives. That's what he called them tonight. And he will argue he is the consistent conservative, the one that has walked the walk. Ted Cruz is en route to South Carolina right now. He will hold a rally in Myrtle Beach and then, as you said, return back to Washington, D.C. to cast some votes tomorrow.
In New Hampshire, suddenly he lost to Donald Trump by more than 60,000 votes. Trump had more than 60,000 votes ahead of Ted Cruz. Clearly a very, very significant significant number. I want to go over to John King right now. John, the evangelical vote, very important in South Carolina, as it was in Iowa, not so much in New Hampshire.
No, not so much in New Hampshire, but Ted Cruz looks like, Wolf, as we wait the final results. We're at 92%, stuck waiting for a number of small towns to report. But it looks like Ted Cruz is, at the moment anyway, holding on to third place. Some small places in there could change the math. But if he comes out of New Hampshire third, then what does he do? He has a win in Iowa. He has a show in New Hampshire. Donald Trump would have a win and a place. So then they go on to South Carolina. And you mentioned, why is this such a big state? Often decisive in Republican presidential primaries. It will not be this year because we have no clear frontrunner yet. But remember Ted Cruz in Iowa with evangelicals? Let's take a look at the population here. The deeper the color, the more evangelicals you find in this part of the region. So let me shrink this down and look at South Carolina. The big ad war between Trump and Cruz is right here, up here in the Greenville market. This is critical to a Christian conservative evangelical Tea Party candidate. This part of the state is absolutely critical. Ted Cruz needs it. Donald Trump is going at Ted Cruz already right there, and Ted Cruz fighting back. Let's pull this out just for a little national perspective. Come back out to the map. Why is this so important? Because if you take a look at this, round one in Iowa went to Ted Cruz, a healthy evangelical population, especially in the caucus environment. They're a clear majority. Here's New Hampshire, very light, very few evangelicals here. South Carolina is next. You can tell, obviously, it's a huge evangelical community, but most of March, not all of March, but most of March is down here. Color speaks for itself. This is evangelical Bible Belt for Ted Cruz, who, unlike Huckabee and Santorum, who won Iowa in 2008 and 2012, he has an organization, he has money. So now you have essentially, he goes at it with Trump in South Carolina. The question is, Kasich will come in with a little momentum. Can he play here? The Bush family name, this state was critical to George H.W. Bush back in '88. It was critical to George W. Bush after John McCain beat him in New Hampshire in 2000. It'll be fascinating this week to see President Bush, George W. Bush, on the road with his brother here. But, Jeb Bush can't afford coming fourth or third again. He needs a breakthrough moment. So the evangelicals are critical for Ted Cruz. Slice of that is also important to Marco Rubio, but Trump, Cruz, South Carolina.
Remind our viewers what happened in South Carolina 4 years ago on the Republican side.
4 years ago on the Republican side, let me come out of the demographics here. 4 years ago, Newt Gingrich beat Mitt Romney here, extending the Republican race. And you can see the Mitt Romney won in Columbia, and he won along the coast here, more establishment areas. Newt Gingrich won pretty much everywhere else because, remember, Santorum did not have the resources to compete, even though he had the evangelical vote out in Iowa. If you go back in time to 2008, a much more classic evangelical Christian conservative vote versus John McCain's establishment vote. Fred Thompson a factor in that race. I would look more to 2008 as we watch what's about to play out between Trump and Cruz. The question is, who is the third force in South Carolina, and how hardy they get? Because this was a very important number back in the 2008 race, excuse me. A lot of people made the case that Thompson drew some votes away from Huckabee, some conservative votes away, and helped John McCain. That'll be very interesting to watch the third and fourth candidate chess inside South Carolina.
And South Carolina, the Democratic side, is very different than either New Hampshire or Iowa, for that matter. Much more diverse Democratic population.
Right, for the very same reason. You're talking about the demographics of the state are different. Now, this is 2008 South Carolina, a big victory for Barack Obama coming. Remember, Obama wins Iowa. Clinton narrowly wins New Hampshire, and a huge win for Obama here, sending the race on deep into the calendar year. But what made the difference here? 43% of the vote was white in South Carolina. Obama was third, 24% behind Edwards and Clinton. But a majority of the vote, as it will be this time in the Democratic primary, is African-American. President Obama got nearly 8 in 10 of those votes. Hillary Clinton thinks that that's her reservoir of votes now. But as our panel's been discussing all night long, Bernie Sanders, he comes from Vermont. He does not have a history of competing for the African-American vote, but he's got a big win tonight. That'll get him some eyes open. The question is, in a couple weeks, can he make his chance and make his inroads there? Hillary Clinton thinks this is the Southern firewall. We're about to find out.
We certainly are not that long away. South Carolina, Nevada, other contests coming up. Also, South Carolina voters have been watching tonight's results very, very closely. What do they want? Who do they like? We're going to talk to some of them.
Boy, do we have a ground game. Where's Corey? Corey Lewandowski. We learned a lot about ground games in 1 week, I have to tell you that.
Democrats and progressives win when voter turnout is high. Republicans win when people are demoralized and voter turnout is low.
And here's what we're going to do. Now we take this campaign to the entire country. We're going to fight for every vote in every state.
And we won because of your energy. Thank you all so much.
My goodness. I don't know what we'd have done tonight if we'd actually won.
The right-wing Republicans we oppose must not be allowed to gain the presidency.
I still love New Hampshire, and I always will.
Thank you, New Hampshire. And now it's on to Nevada, South Carolina, and beyond.
The votes still being counted in New Hampshire tonight. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, though, they are the clear winners. On the Republican side, the drama is still unfolding. The Ohio governor, John Kasich, surging to second place, while Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio, they are still battling for third place. Rubio, though, acknowledging he dropped the ball in the last Republican presidential debate, but he and most of his rivals, they are now moving on to the next contest, South Carolina. They'll be on the ground there within hours. Here are the numbers as of right now in New Hampshire on the Republican side. As you can see, 92% of the vote is in. Donald Trump, a decisive, impressive win. 35% over John Kasich, who comes in second with 16%. 50,000 votes more for Donald Trump over John Kasich. The battle for third place continuing right now. Ted Cruz at 12%. Jeb Bush at 11%. Marco Rubio also at 11%, but just below Jeb Bush. Christie disappointing 7%. Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson in low single digits. On the Democratic side, also 50,000 vote advantage. Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire got 60% of the vote to Hillary Clinton. A very disappointing, only 38% of the vote. A major setback for Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, but now it's on to South Carolina. I want to go to CNN's Randy Kay. She's in South Carolina for us with a focus group. Randy.
Hi there, Wolf. We watched the results coming out of New Hampshire with a group of about 65 undecided voters here, both Democratic voters and Republican voters, and they all had in their hot little hands this dial. We call this dial testing. So right now it's on neutral, and when they liked something, watching the candidates' speeches, they turned the dial up. And when they didn't like something, they turned the dial all the way down. So this was real-time sentiment per second. Every second that they reacted, we caught it. We saw what you might call an EKG line on the screen, and that was how we were able to monitor their reactions. So I can tell you that when Hillary Clinton was speaking here on the Democratic side, they really liked a few moments. They liked when she was talking about playing tough on Wall Street. They liked when she was talking about equal pay for women. But it was this one comment where she was really sending the message that I will work for you, that this group's dials went way up. Watch this.
It isn't right that the kids I met in Flint on Sunday were poisoned because their governor wanted to save money. It isn't right for a grandmother here in New Hampshire or anywhere else to have to choose between paying rent and buying medicine because a prescription drug company increased the price 4,000% overnight.
So let's get some reaction to Hillary Clinton there. Andrew, what did you think of Hillary Clinton? You're an undecided voter. How do you feel now?
I think Hillary got it. You know, I think she realized that she better get moving and start talking about issues and things that the people want to hear about. So, and that's what she did tonight in her succession speech. I think that's where I was undecided, and she actually turned me around.
Really? Because we spoke, and yes, you weren't feeling the love for Hillary Clinton.
And I was not.
Now you are.
And now I'm getting there.
You're closer.
I'm getting
there. All right, all right. Well, let's ask Kathy here, because you were leaning toward Hillary Clinton, right, when you arrived?
That's correct.
And where do you stand now?
I still have grave concerns about her ability to draw in the independent voter, and tonight just reinforced my worry about that.
So you're still undecided?
I am.
Okay, well, let's go check over here with the Republican side, because we have a lot of people on the Republican side also undecided. But we watched as they were listening to John Kasich, who came in second, and watched their reaction. And really, this group tended to stay pretty neutral. They didn't have a whole lot of reaction to Kasich until he started talking about Hillary Clinton. Watch this.
Hillary, you just needed this much and head to South Carolina because it ain't working here, okay? It's not working here, okay?
So John Kasich, as I said, not getting a whole lot of reaction. Barbara, you came in undecided. You normally vote Democratic. Have you decided now, sitting here amongst the Republican voters?
Oh, I'm still undecided. I know that I am not supporting the Republican candidates, and I'm not supporting the two top, who were the two top Democrats. And
how will you decide?
I don't know. I need to hear someone who's a little more moderate, where some of my more conservative views, which the Republicans have, are there, and some of my more liberal social views that the Democrats have are there. I consider myself a moderate, and I fit in either party, but this year I'm voting in the primary for the Republicans, as I can do in South Carolina.
All right. Well, let me ask this group, the Republicans as a whole here, the Republican voters, was anybody won over by Donald Trump? Yes, tonight. How about John Kasich? Anyone? Like him as a VP. What about after watching the debate, the last Republican debate? Did anybody decide against Marco Rubio? Raise your hands. Wow, very large group. Okay, well, let's see what's going on over here finally before we go at the Democratic side. Did Bernie Sanders win anybody over here? Raise your hands. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's big. So of our group of 65 undecided voters, Wolf, I'm told that 23 have finally decided on a candidate right here tonight. Back to you.
Very interesting, Randy Kay. Thanks very much. Coming up, the candidates moving ahead to the next contest.
You will see us again because we're coming back in November to win the general election. And New England, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts. We'll see you in a few weeks. We're going to come and win. And South Carolina, we are on the way.
We have some real talent in the Republican Party.
Maybe, just maybe, we are turning the page on a dark part of American politics.
We put Washington on the run, and tonight's outcome is a victory for we the people.
All right, let's take a look at the numbers right now. They're still counting votes in New Hampshire on the Republican side. 92% of the votes have been counted. Donald Trump, the decisive, impressive winner with 35%. John Kasich, the Ohio governor, coming in second place. He's 50,000 votes behind Donald Trump with 16%. Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, they're all still fighting for third place, although Ted Cruz seems to have a slight advantage right now over Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio. Christie, a very disappointing 7%. Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson, they're at only 2%. On the Democratic side, a very, very impressive win by Bernie Sanders. At the same time, Bernie Sanders getting 50,000 more votes, 50,000 more votes than Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, as we can see right now. Tonight wasn't necessarily the result that Republican establishment figures in Washington or New York or elsewhere were hoping for or even expecting. I want to go to Mark Preston. He's in Manchester for us right now. What are you hearing about the reaction from the establishment? Donald Trump is not necessarily the favorite of the Republican establishment.
No, Wolf. In fact, they were hoping that this would be a winnowing process where they could even shrink this field smaller than the 5 candidates that will, by and large, be able to come out of New Hampshire and to continue on. I was up here about 3 weeks ago talking to all the operatives for the campaigns, and they were telling me that what they thought was going to happen by Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon after the election, so tomorrow, that the phone calls would begin. The phone calls would begin to these governors to say it is time to get out of the race. It is time to consolidate behind one candidate. And the reason being is that the establishment, Wolf, as we all know, is very concerned about Donald Trump, and they're also very concerned about Ted Cruz, even though he is his U.S. senator. So the winnowing process here in New Hampshire hasn't worked very well, except in one case. We will very likely see one person drop out. We'll see what he has to say. But Christie, who was supposed to go to South Carolina, is now heading back home to New Jersey. He's taking some time to, I guess, consider what he's going to do, Wolf. Let's listen to exactly what Christie, the New Jersey governor, said. Listen to this.
I have both won elections that I was supposed to lose, and I've lost elections I was supposed to win. And what that means is you never know. And it's both the magic and the mystery of politics, that you never quite know when which is going to happen, even when you think you do. And so we leave New Hampshire tonight without an ounce of regret.
David Chalian, very disappointing night for Governor Christie.
No doubt about that. Heading, as Mark was saying, back to New Jersey to consider his options from here. I'm sure we'll hear from him again tomorrow, if not in the days ahead. But this is not what he was looking for. He put everything into New Hampshire, and that sounded to me like somebody who realized it did not work out for him there. I do want to mention, though, what Mark is talking about, sort of the hand-wringing on the Republican establishment side. Well, we got to back up here and really look at what has happened here. Ted Cruz won Iowa. Donald Trump won New Hampshire. The establishment can hand-wring all they want, but right now, the frontrunners for the Republican nomination are Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. And so that may cause some concern inside the establishment, but it's not even close in terms of the strength of the candidacies right now. Trump and Cruz are so far ahead, so much stronger with the Republican base right now and where the electorate is than that other lane of candidates, that I'm not sure hand-wringing is the solution here. Clearly, they need to consolidate behind one if they're going to have a shot at all. But I'm not even sure that the energy is so clearly with the Trump and Cruz camps that I think, you know, this is going to be a very tough battle for the establishment to win in the long run.
Speaking, Mark, of the establishment, Jeb Bush, he's still in this contest. He's moving from New Hampshire down to South Carolina. He's got money. He's got staff. How's he doing?
Well, you know, the interesting thing about Jeb Bush is that I think, you know, to David's point, is that he's hoping that Ted Cruz and Donald Trump try to destroy one another. I mean, the goal for the establishment is for that to happen. Now, Jeb Bush tonight was very clear in who he is going to go after, and he's going right after Donald Trump. Try to make it clear to voters, do they want a president like Donald Trump, and trying to make this compare and contrasting between him and between Donald Trump. Now, a lot of people have counted Jeb Bush out, but let's not forget, Jeb Bush still has a lot of money. Jeb Bush is still going to South Carolina, where the Bush family does have a foothold in. And Jeb Bush, unlike some of the other candidates that are starting to come down, Jeb Bush is showing a little fire in his belly, and he is starting to come up. Is it still a pretty steep climb? I believe so, but I don't think we can count Jeb Bush out as we head down into South Carolina, Wolf.
Yeah, but you got to give Donald Trump a lot of credit for a huge, very impressive win in New Hampshire tonight. Now the contest moves on to South Carolina, Nevada, and beyond. Still ahead. We'll have the final numbers. They are coming in right now. Also, Hillary Clinton, she's way behind Bernie Sanders. As you know, he's the decisive winner by some 50,000 votes in New Hampshire over her. What a disappointing night for Hillary Clinton. Will we see any major change in her strategy as she now moves forward?
The people here have said is that given the enormous crises facing our country, it is just too late for the same old establishment politics and establishment economics. The people want real change.
It seems like that based on the results tonight. Let's talk about with our panel, with both panels here, about what happens now on the Democratic side.
Well, I think what you're going to see in South Carolina is Hillary Clinton embracing President Obama even more than she's already done.
We should point out Nevada is first for the Democrats.
Nevada is first, and as David was pointing out earlier, you know, caucuses can play to Bernie Sanders' strength with his passionate supporters.
But in the Nevada caucus, independents do not get to vote in the Democratic.
No, it's Democrats. But there was a memo publicly distributed by the Clinton campaign tonight in which they made the point very clearly that Sanders will face increased pressure to explain his record, especially on issues where he deviates from President Obama.
Yeah, I think our buddy Bill Press's book, Buyer's Remorse, How Obama Let Progressives Down, with a blurb by Bernie Sanders, may be getting a lot of attention in the next few years.
I hope you are right.
Yes. But it's a problem, Bill, because most Democrats, honestly, most Democrats don't feel that way, and that's where she's going to try and drive some wedge, particularly going into a state like South Carolina.
I think it's I was mentioned. Okay. This is
You get 30 seconds first.
I just want to remind you that, as David pointed out in the exit polls earlier, right? People were asked, "Do you want to continue the policies of Barack Obama?" Right. 41%. Would you like them to be more liberal? 40%.
Right.
So I don't think it's true that everybody says, no, we just have to continue.
And that's it. But the difference between New Hampshire and some of these other states is pretty profound. And so I think that's the problem. And I think can Bernie Sanders expand his base beyond the white liberals that he's attracted? That's going to be the challenge moving forward.
And he's got to figure that out. I mean, he's been saying for 9 months, that he's been courting African Americans, but at the same time, African Americans don't really know him yet, right? I understand that tomorrow morning, or I guess today, he's going to meet with Al Sharpton in New York. He's obviously got Ben Jealous on his side. He's really got to figure that out. That voter, that black woman voter that Randy Kaye talked to and talked about Hillary Clinton, that's the voter that he needs to reach in a state like South Carolina. Older African-American women. It could be that he was the one that should have gone to Flint, Michigan, right? He was so ahead in New Hampshire, he probably should have gone to Flint rather than Hillary Clinton.
But there is an interesting opportunity for him. It's important to remember that the Sanders coalition is not the same as the Obama coalition. He does a lot better than Obama did with white working class voters. And so the challenge for him is, can he put together a coalition of young, idealistic liberals and working class voters who will be who he can win over on issues of trade? Those were not issues that Barack Obama hit nearly as hard. Can he hit Hillary Clinton on issues of trade and globalization? That might be his path going forward.
He did very well with working class voters tonight, and he did in Iowa as well.
Right, exactly.
But her challenge going forward is less to defeat Bernie Sanders, but it's to motivate and inspire people to come to her. She needs to be visionary. She needs to be forward-thinking. When you lose young people by 70 percentile, that says something. So I think that's her challenge.
But at this plus point, or minus 4%.
Sorry. I think the reason Bernie is so well, and in the sense of reason Trump did so well, is they both tapped into a discontent, if not an anger and a frustration, with the establishment and with politics as usual. And no matter how hard, she's a great candidate, but no matter how hard she tries, she is still the establishment. She is politics as usual. She has not changed.
And also, how many times has that discussion been had about retooling the campaign, sort of changing what her message is? Haven't we heard that a lot before?
We don't have another hour.
We heard it.
But I would love to have a debate with you about
do you want to have a drink afterwards?
No. It's already lit. I can't drink. I mean, Anderson wore me out tonight. But we have to have this conversation about what constitutes the establishment. Because I understand where Bernie is coming from. But I also believe that going forward, he needs to understand that certain people have fought to get to the table, and putting a woman or minorities at the table and saying we're the establishment.
Oh, no.
That's
but a former First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State is the establishment.
He's been a mayor and a member of Congress and the United States Senator.
I gotta wrap. I hate to do this. I know it's only been 9 hours coverage, and you're all raring to go. But I gotta toss it to another broadcast. It only feels like 8 hours to me. We're still counting the votes, obviously, in New Hampshire. Our coverage continues now with John Berman and Poppy Harlow.
Hello and welcome to our viewers all around the world. I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm Errol Barnett. Thanks for joining our 2-hour block. Coming up here on CNN Newsroom, a key primary, how the results in New Hampshire could reshape the U.S. presidential race.
Inside Aleppo, an exclusive report from the embattled city at the center of the Syrian civil war.
And we'll take you to Brazil, where there are concerns about the Zika virus and concerns over construction for the Summer Olympics. Donald Trump led the polls in New Hampshire leading up to the primary, and here we are. The numbers held true Tuesday night. The billionaire businessman easily won the nation's first primary, scoring more than 35% of the vote.
John Kasich finished second in the Republican race with 16%, and right now Ted Cruz has barely edged out Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio for third place with 12% of the vote.
Trump's win pretty incredible, but take a look at the picture on the Democratic side. Bernie Sanders cruising to victory over Hillary Clinton, winning 60% of the vote there.
Well, Sanders' win comes after a razor-thin loss to Hillary Clinton in Iowa. In his victory speech, Sanders repeated one of his key campaign messages.
Together, we have sent the message that will echo from Wall Street to Washington, from Maine to California. And that is that the government of our great country belongs to all of the people and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors and their super PACs.
Meanwhile, Republican Donald Trump was, there he is, all smiles as he addressed supporters after his New Hampshire win. He was widely expected to come first there. But after a second-place finish in Iowa, Trump was eager to get back on top. In his speech, he promised an American resurgence.
We're going to rebuild our military. It's going to be so big, so strong, so powerful. Nobody is going to mess with us, believe me, nobody. We are going to make our country so strong. We are going to start winning again. We don't win anymore as a country. We don't win on trade. We don't win with the military. We can't beat ISIS. We don't win with anything. We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much. You are going to be so happy. We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before.
Trump certainly staying on message there. Now, John Kasich finished in second place in the Republican primary, and he credits his win, if you can call it that, to running a positive campaign.
Maybe, just maybe, we are turning the page on a dark part of American politics, because tonight the light overcame the darkness of negative campaigning. And you made it happen. You made it happen. You made it happen. You made it happen.
Well, meanwhile, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are fighting for third place, though Cruz has a slight advantage at this time. Rubio blames his position on his poor performance at a recent Republican debate, and Cruz hails conservatives as the real winner of the race. Take a listen.
I want you to understand something. Our disappointment tonight is not on you. It's on me. It's on me. I did not do well on Saturday night, so listen to this. That will never happen again.
The real winner is the conservative grassroots. Who propelled us to an outright victory in Iowa and to a far stronger result and outcome in New Hampshire than anyone had predicted.
And we will hear from Jeb Bush. Anyone remember him? Governor of Florida, former president's brother. We'll hear what he had to say in just a few minutes.
But for more on what these results mean and what lies ahead for the candidates, CNN's Chris Freites joins us now live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Good to see you, Chris. So the outsiders, the clear winners in New Hampshire, Donald Trump taking more than 35% of the vote. Astounding when you consider he's not a politician and he broke every rule in the book. How is the Republican establishment dealing with his success and the possibility he could very well be the nominee?
Well, I'll tell you, Rosemary, they're not happy about it. But this was not a huge surprise to the Republican establishment. Trump has been leading in New Hampshire for weeks now, and it really was a question about who's going to come in second, who's going to own that so-called establishment lane. And tonight, it was Ohio Governor John Kasich. He was able to basically campaign. He camped out here in New Hampshire for 8 months, and he did over 100 town halls, and he really stuck his campaign and its future. He put all his chips here on New Hampshire, and that worked for him. Now, Jeb Bush also making a big comeback, and they were able to take Marco Rubio down. That was largely thanks to Christie. He really beat Marco Rubio up in that debate. Rubio spent most of the week trying to say that he didn't get hurt that hard, that it wasn't a big failure. But as you just played for all the viewers, he acknowledged tonight that he did make a mistake there, and that cost his campaign. Now, Christie didn't get much of a bump out of that. He was supposed to go on to South Carolina, and he's going to go back to New Jersey instead. He's not suspended his campaign or dropped out yet, but certainly he's on dropout watch. So what's that mean for the establishment right now? That means that John Kasich is riding pretty high, but don't discount Jeb Bush. He has a national network. He has a super PAC that's raised $100 million. And look for him and Rubio to really start to go at it, because those are the two big dogs right now. There's a big question, though, even though John Kasich did so well here, does he have the staying power in South Carolina, in Nevada, in some of these big contests that are coming out? He wants to play to some of the southern states. He thinks maybe in Mississippi, Alabama, he can do well, but he's really looking toward the Midwest. Remember, he's from Ohio. He wants to see what happens in Ohio. He also wants to see what happens in Michigan. That's his next New Hampshire. In fact, he's going to spend some time campaigning there, but that's almost a month's time. A lot can change in between there, and he's going to need some momentum. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, they're really going to fight it out, guys.
And with all that considered, you know, despite those who have funding, those who have kind of political backing, there is a clear message that has been sent in Iowa and now in New Hampshire by voters, and that is that they really do not like the establishment. I know there's a bit of jockeying going on, as you've just described, among those still in the race trying to own that lane. Which of those candidates, though, has the most to gain or has the most momentum coming out of Iowa? Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it is a bad year to be considered an establishment choice. Well, my question...
There's no doubt about that.
There you are. Go ahead, Chris. We just had a bit of a blip there. Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. No, but to answer your question, Errol, I mean, I think it is a bad year to be an establishment candidate, whether you're Jeb Bush or whether you're Hillary Clinton. You saw in Iowa, you know, she was way ahead in the polls there. She only won that race by a few tenths of a %, and she got crushed tonight in New Hampshire. She's hoping to move on to South Carolina. She has a lot more support in South Carolina. She does very well among African-American voters, and they come out in big numbers in South Carolina. It's why you saw Bernie Sanders start to play, even starting this week in New Hampshire. He started to look forward a little bit to South Carolina. He got the backing of former NAACP President Ben Jealous. He also started talking about things that are important to the African-American community. He talked about police shootings. That's obviously very important to Black Lives Matter. He talked about how African-Americans are unemployed. Young African-Americans are unemployed at higher rates than whites, and they're incarcerated for things like marijuana possession at higher rates as well. So you're starting to see that shift, and he's trying to blunt some of the support that Hillary Clinton has among, you know, kind of more establishment, more traditional voting blocs like the African Americans, guys.
All right, Chris Freights reporting there live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Many thanks. We'll talk again with you next hour.
Everyone likely exhausted. Even our equipment is getting tired here as we continue to cover all this. We do want to make the point, though, that there is a long way to go still in the presidential race. Here are some of the key dates to put on your calendar. Next up, South Carolina. Republicans vote in their primary February 20th. And Democrats 1 week after that.
March 1st is Super Tuesday, a potentially make-or-break day for the candidates. Primaries and caucuses will be held in 15 states and territories across the U.S.
And get comfy, because campaigning continues through the spring into the summer, culminating in national conventions. Republicans meet in Cleveland July 18th, where they will officially name their presidential candidate.
And the Democrats choose their candidate a week later in Philadelphia, and then it's on to the general election in November.
And later on Newsroom, we will have more on the primary results from New Hampshire, including analysis on why winning that state is so important, considering there are so many more to go. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, so let's... After a narrow loss to Hillary Clinton in Iowa, Bernie Sanders scored a double-digit win in New Hampshire. In his victory speech, he thanked his supporters for turning out to the polls.
What happened here in New Hampshire in terms of an enthusiastic and aroused electorate, people who came out in large numbers, that is what will happen all over this country.
And consider this, Jeb Bush, the one-time front-runner of the party, is now battling for runner-up status. Bush, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are essentially fighting for a third-place finish in New Hampshire's Republican race, though at the moment Ted Cruz has a slight advantage. However, Bush sounded optimistic as he addressed his supporters.
Mr. President, the pundits had it all figured out last Monday night. When the Iowa caucuses were complete, they said that the race was now a three-person race between two freshman senators and a reality TV star. And while the reality TV star is still doing well, it looks like you all have reset the race, and for that I am really grateful.
Well, Christie fell well behind in the Republican race. He congratulated Donald Trump on winning the primary and told supporters he would return home to New Jersey to take a breather and decide the next step in his campaign.
They have chosen their candidate tonight, and he deserves congratulations for that. And he has both my and Mary Pat's congratulations to he and Melania and their family on their victory tonight. Mary Pat and I spoke tonight, and we've decided that we're going to go home to New Jersey tomorrow, and we're going to take a deep breath, see what the final results are tonight.
There's a lot of moving pieces here. What should we make of everything? Well, CNN political commentator and conservative radio host Ben Ferguson joins us now from Dallas to figure it all out. Ben, I know that you've not been a Trump fan or trumpeter, as Sarah Palin would say, but he is now a primary winner. This non-politician who said plenty of offensive things is a solidified Republican frontrunner. Are you losing your mind today?
No, not losing my mind. I mean, if there's any place that Donald Trump should do well, it would be in New Hampshire. This fit his demographics. This fit his, you know, the obvious support that he has among his supporters is very consistent and strong. And when you have a field that's as big as this one was in New Hampshire, with as many people being in double digits barely, you have him in a solid first place. That is not surprising to me at all. The big question is, moving forward, will he be able to do this in other states? Remember, New Hampshire is a place where it's predominantly white. There are not that many minorities there. So this is abnormal electoral map, especially compared to the rest of the country. I also will say this. If you remember, John McCain did very well in 2000 in New Hampshire. He went on to lose badly to then Governor Bush, who became President Bush. So this is far from over.
And, Ben, of course, we knew who was going to come in first. We didn't know who was going to come in second. John Kasich surprised everyone with his second place in New Hampshire. This will be a real shot in the arm for him, but he needs some financial support. How quickly will that come now? And, of course, he's now trying to claim the establishment crown.
Well, he certainly needs to be able to raise money off this very quickly. I mean, if there's anything you can remember from Rick Santorum, the last election, was that he was not able to capitalize on some of his early victories when it came to raising money against Mitt Romney. And I think that Kasich is going to be very smart about this and make sure he goes out there and asks people for money directly in the days moving forward towards South Carolina. But ultimately, this was a big showing for him. This is also hard work paying off. He spent a lot of time, had a lot of town halls, more than 100 of them in New Hampshire, and that paid off for him. And that's going to, I think, pay big dividends moving forward. Plus, you've had the implosion of Marco Rubio. Make no mistake about it, tonight is a terrible night for Rubio, and it's going to be very hard for him to recover from this, especially after the beating he took in the debate the other night, for at the hands of Christie, who really exposed him in his weakest debate thus far.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the field here. You have Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, as well as Marco Rubio, all walking away with just over 10% of the vote each. It seems as though Ted Cruz is leading among them, and he will likely do well in South Carolina. So with Rubio having a bad day, explain why Ted Cruz is still in this thing.
Well, I think Ted Cruz is definitely a candidate that was not going to do well in New Hampshire. The fact that he can finish in the top 3 or 4 is certainly a victory for him. One of the main reasons why is many of the people voting, the majority of them, more than 70%, did not identify as evangelical Christian. Well, you compare that to New Hampshire, Iowa, there's a big difference here. So for him to just have a solid showing going to South Carolina, that is going to be a big showdown there. He obviously has got a solid ground game in South Carolina, and that's going to be important. You have to have a real ground game in these states coming up.
And that was CNN political commentator Ben Ferguson joining us from Texas. And coming up shortly, we talk to Maria Cardona about the Democratic candidates and what Tuesday's vote could mean for the rest of the race.
Now, as we've been discussing this hour, the New Hampshire primary really was a winning contest for the anti-establishment candidates Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders.
And here is a look at how the primary unfolded from the first votes to the victory speeches.
On the Republican side, Donald Trump has high expectations. Bernie Sanders is looking for a clear and commanding win over Hillary Clinton tonight.
They dumped all of the ballots out, separated them all up.
We are standing by for the first raw vote totals to come in.
CNN projects that Donald Trump will be the winner of the New Hampshire Republican primary. We also project that Bernie Sanders will be the winner of the Democratic primary.
2 years ago, if somebody had told you that Bernie Sanders, an independent Democratic socialist from Vermont, and Donald Trump, a businessman and developer from New York City, were going to win the Democratic and Republican New Hampshire primaries, you would have said easily. You would have said I was crazy.
I would have said you were crazy.
We are going to make America great again.
Bernie Sanders gave a rousing kind of stump speech.
Because of a huge voter turnout, and I say huge, we won.
This is a shellacking or more. It's a total rout if you look at the state of New Hampshire.
I still love New Hampshire, and I always will.
CNN projects John Kasich, the Ohio governor, is coming in second place in the Republican primary.
Tonight, the light overcame the darkness of negative campaigning.
It could be a long haul. We're going to have a lot more nights like this one. Anderson Cooper, back to you.
All right, and of course, Hillary Clinton won the New Hampshire primary back in 2008, but history did not repeat itself Tuesday.
No, and it wasn't even close. Bernie Sanders beat Clinton by more than 20 percentage points in this race after a narrow loss in the Iowa caucuses. In her concession speech, Clinton told voters she would keep trying to earn their vote.
Here's what we're going to do. Now we take this campaign to the entire country. We're going to fight for every vote in every state. We're going to fight for real solutions that make a real difference in people's lives.
And CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona joins us now. So as we heard from Hillary Clinton there, she's going to fight on and she's going to fight for every vote. But of course, this must have taken the wind out of her sails. I know you are particularly a supporter of Hillary. How is she going to win back the youth vote from Bernie, and particularly from young women who have abandoned her?
Well, I'll say a couple things. The first one is congratulations to Bernie Sanders. This was a terrific win for him. Can't take that away. But I will also say that from the very beginning, when the Clinton campaign knew that Bernie Sanders was going to run, they gathered a bunch of their supporters, and I was one of them, and they said, New Hampshire is going to be very tough for us, and most likely Bernie Sanders will win. So they knew from the very beginning that the terrain was not going to be in her favor. He is as close as New Hampshire can come to a favorite son with him, being from a neighboring state in Vermont. They have been seeing him for decades, right, because they're in the same media market. And tonight, interestingly enough, the makeup of the electorate also favored him a lot. As you know, a lot of independents could go in and right then and there register as Democrats. The electorate on the Democratic side was more liberal than it normally is for New Hampshire, and that definitely helps Bernie Sanders. Moving forward, though, what the campaign is going to do, and this is what Secretary Clinton was alluding to, is that you go on to the rest of the states that actually are more representative of the country as a whole. She will be going into states where you have large electorates of African Americans, larger electorates of Latinos, and I think that is where you're going to see her strength really show. These are communities where she has been working for decades, and she has deep and robust relationships with a lot of the voters in those communities. And I think you're right. She has a challenge with younger voters, and she has a challenge with younger women. But if you can say anything about Hillary Clinton, is that she does not shy from a challenge. And I think that's one of the things that she was alluding to there as well, which is that she is going to work harder than ever to earn those votes, to let these young women know that she is going to be for them, that she's going to be fighting for them. She's going to talk about her record. I think a lot of it is a lot of these voters are young, and they don't necessarily know that she's been working on all of these issues for more than 4 decades.
But the fact is, Bernie Sanders having this huge night, in his words, and if I hear one more huge joke, I'll lose my mind. But he's going to be working just as hard. He's riding this anti-establishment wave, but he is vulnerable for 2 very important reasons. He's got this great support from young people, but they don't historically vote or turn out in the numbers older people do, and his support base is not as diverse.
That's right.
How can he shore up those holes quickly as we move into these next primaries?
Well, I will say that he's done a terrific job in the last several months in reaching out to minority communities, because I think his campaign understands deeply that that is a big challenge for Senator Sanders, because he hasn't had the kind of deep relationships or history with these communities. He hasn't really had to. He comes from Vermont. It's a 95% white voter state, right? And so they acknowledge that, and they have had some success. They had recently Ben Jealous come out, who's a former president of the NAACP, and support him and endorse him. I think that's terrific for Bernie Sanders. I think the question, though, is even though he is doing a lot to get to know these communities in a way that he really hadn't in past years, is it going to be enough, and is it going to be in time? Because he's going to have to do this very quickly, and these are communities where the one-on-one relationship and the trust that you have with the person that you're going to give your vote to is incredibly important. As a Latina, I can tell you that Latinos all over the country are very excited about Hillary. Latina women are very excited about Hillary. And she has a great and long and robust relationship with Latinos, and that's what she's going to be underscoring moving forward.
All right, we'll be watching very closely to see what happens. It is a tough
very
fight
exciting.
ahead, indeed. Maria Cardona, always
and you'll
a
have to
pleasure.
come back. Great to have you here.
I would love to. Thank you.
See you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And here's another important question. Just how accurate are the New Hampshire primaries when it comes to predicting who will win the White House?
Yeah, Tom Foreman gives us some historical perspective.
Here are all of the Democratic winners of the New Hampshire primary since 1976. And we're going to subtract from this all of the presidents who were in office trying to hold on to the job. And we wind up with 7 people out there. Out of these 7 who won in New Hampshire, how many became the party nominee? Just Jimmy Carter, Mike Dukakis, Al Gore, and John Kerry. Just 4 of them. And out of those 4, only 1 went on to become the president, and that was Jimmy Carter. What about the Republican side? Is it different or better there? Well, let's lay them out since 1976. Once again, we subtract all of them who were in office just trying to hold on, and that brings us down to 7. And again, if we say how many of these New Hampshire winners became the party nominee, we get 4. Once more, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, John McCain, and Mitt Romney. And out of them, of course, only 2 actually became the president. So for all this talk about momentum and early leads, this really is just one step along the way to the presidency in New Hampshire here. And it's not a guaranteed step at all.
Thanks to Tom Foreman for that. So get comfortable. There's a lot.
It also puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you get excited about New Hampshire.
It does. Many other big stories for you coming up. Some Brazilians say the upcoming Olympic Games are not only displacing them, but also putting them at a greater risk for the Zika virus. We'll bring you their story after this short break. Now, Now, the campaigns leading up to the New Hampshire primaries were filled with forceful, harsh, and at a few points vulgar language.
Very. But with this political round over and the votes tallied, each candidate addressed their supporters. And here are some of their parting words for New Hampshire.
Turnout. And I say we won.
I know I have some work to do, particularly with young people, but I will repeat again what I have said this week. Even if they are not supporting me now, I support them.
They're throwing everything at me except the kitchen sink, and I have the feeling that kitchen sink is coming pretty soon as well.
There are those who want to deny the passion and the purpose you all show every day for this campaign. But you are the reason we are here, and you are the reason we are going to win.
We have to start with Melania, what she puts up with.
There's magic in the air with this campaign. We see this as an opportunity for all of us to reshine America, to restore the spirit of America, and to leave no one behind. Am I right? That's what we're all fighting for.
I heard parts of Bernie's speech. He wants to give away our country, folks. He wants to give away. We're not going to let it happen.
Our disappointment tonight is not on you. It's on me. I did not do well on Saturday night, so listen to this. That will never happen again.
We're going to go home to New Jersey to wait. By tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, we should know what the vote count is, and that's going to allow us to make a decision about how we move from here in this race.
And you are watching CNN Newsroom. I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm Errol Barnett. Remember, you can always connect with us on Twitter. It's great to hear from you and spend a bit of time with us. We'll have much more on the New Hampshire primary results in our next hour. Stay with us. A very big win for the outsiders. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump crushed their competition for the White House in New Hampshire.
We are going now to South Carolina. We're going to win in South Carolina.
And now it's on to Nevada, South Carolina, and beyond.
Also, crisis in Syria, growing fears for hundreds of thousands of people who could be trapped by a government offensive.
And terror fears. America's top spy says ISIS militants are determined to strike the U.S. and its allies in 2016.
Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. I'm Rosemary Church.
And I'm Errol Barnett. Thanks for joining our second hour of CNN Newsroom. Now, Donald Trump finished strong in the New Hampshire Republican primary, just as the polls predicted he might. The billionaire businessman easily won the first U.S. primary on Tuesday night, scoring more than 35% of the vote.
John Kasich finished second in the Republican race with 16%, and right now Ted Cruz has barely edged out Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio for third place with 12% of the vote.
Now, on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders cruised to victory over Hillary Clinton, and the difference is quite large, winning 60% of the vote. Now, at first glance, it might seem like Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Bernie Sanders have nothing in common, except that they both won their party's primary races in New Hampshire, as we mentioned.
But the truth is, they are both outsiders, neither one a lifelong member of their party. In their victory speeches, they promised big changes ahead.
We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much. You are going to be so happy. We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before.
What began last week in Iowa, what voters here in New Hampshire confirmed tonight, is nothing short of the beginning of a political revolution.
For more insight on these results, CNN's Chris Freites is staying up well into the wee hours of the night and morning. Joins us live from Manchester in New Hampshire. Chris, thanks for being with us. Trump really has surprised the establishment, probably scared the Republican establishment as well, and for the first time now has a win under his belt. What's the reaction to that?
Well, I'll tell you, Errol, you guys both pointed out that Sanders and Trump, outsiders. It's almost like, you say you want a revolution both in the Republican and Democratic parties. And, going forward, I think Donald Trump really, he really 35% of the vote. That was more than double Ohio Governor John Kasich, who was the establishment candidate here, and he's really kind of rewriting the rules of American politics. New Hampshire voters, for the longest time, they wanted to see the candidate. They wanted to make sure they had a lot of town halls, that they came here and did that one-on-one personal touch. Donald Trump didn't do that so much. He kind of stuck to the big rallies. In fact, last week his jet got snowed in New York. He didn't come to New Hampshire for a scheduled stop. He got a lot of flack for that. People saying, what, you can't stay overnight one day out of New York to campaign. It didn't seem to hurt him at all. So, this is really has the establishment worried, particularly because they thought coming out of this race it would be a three-man race, and it looks like it's going to be a five-man race going forward with that establishment candidate who maybe can take on Trump still not established yet.
And Chris, on the other side of the political equation, Bernie Sanders had a massive win and stole the momentum from Hillary Clinton. What impact will that likely have going forward? And do Sanders people really feel that he has a chance here?
Well, they do, and now certainly Hillary Clinton spent most of the week trying to manage those expectations, saying that Bernie Sanders has been a long-time senator from Vermont. This was almost a home field advantage for him because New Hampshire's right next door to Vermont. But Bernie Sanders racking up a huge win here. He needed a big W. He very much came close in Iowa, but he didn't get the win. Now it's almost one-on-one. Of course, you don't count the wins here by states, it's by delegates. And Bernie Sanders folks are saying that they can mount a national campaign. Now they're going into South Carolina and Nevada, but they're looking ahead to places like Colorado, Massachusetts, Minnesota. Those are places where he plays well. Let's take a listen to what he said tonight to all his big supporters.
The people of New Hampshire have sent a profound message to the political establishment, to the economic establishment, and, by the way, to the media establishment. What the people here have said is that given the enormous crises facing our country, it is just too late for the same old establishment politics and establishment economics. The people want real change.
So there you have Bernie Sanders talking about how he's taking on the establishment in much the same way Donald Trump has. And what's been so interesting to watch when Hillary Clinton was leading nationally and Bernie Sanders was way behind in the polls. Remember, he was losing by 50% when he got in. He was barely registering on the polls. So this has been a huge comeback for Bernie Sanders. But Donald Trump used to talk about how he would love to take on Hillary Clinton. And as Sanders has gained in the polls, he's starting to set his sights on Sanders as well. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say about Bernie Sanders tonight.
He wants to give away our country, folks. He wants to give away. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let it happen. I don't know where it's going with Bernie. We wish him a lot of luck, but we are going to make America great again, but we're going to do it the old-fashioned way.
So there you have Donald Trump taking a hit at a large Republican critique of Bernie Sanders, which is that, he wants to give away everything, whether that's free tuition or free universal health care for all, and making that Republican argument. That's not the American way. So it's very fun to watch how these race dynamics are changing as voters start to weigh in, guys.
And incredible to think Trump and Sanders, both sons of New York, not far away from each other from where they're born, on opposite sides of the ideological spectrum, coming out of New Hampshire, both with a win. Chris Freites joins us from Manchester. You can now get some sleep, Chris, just past 3 a.m. there. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
So So Hillary Clinton won the New Hampshire primary back in 2008, but she got thrashed in Tuesday's vote there.
In her concession speech, Clinton told her supporters she'd keep trying to earn their vote.
I know I have some work to do, particularly with young people, but I will repeat again what I have said this week. Even if they are not supporting me now, I support them.
And an overjoyed John Kasich thanks supporters for his second-place finish in New Hampshire. The Ohio governor had staked his presidential hopes on a big finish there. He credited some of his success to positive campaigning.
Maybe, just maybe, we are turning the page on a dark part of American politics, because tonight the light overcame the darkness of negative campaigning. And you made it happen. You made it happen.
And Governor Jeb Bush, who, last year was considered the front-runner of this race, he's now battling for runner-up status within the party. Bush, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio all fighting for third place in New Hampshire's Republican race, though Cruz has a slight advantage at this moment. However, Bush sounded optimistic as he addressed his supporters.
Mr. President, the pundits had it all figured out last Monday night. When the Iowa caucuses were complete, they said that the race was now a three-person race between two freshman senators and a reality TV star. And while the reality TV star is still doing well, it looks like you all have reset the race, and for that I am really grateful.
And after his second-place win, John Kasich is not wasting any time. He has already left New Hampshire for the next battleground.
And that is the state of South Carolina. The governor is hoping momentum from New Hampshire will help him defy expectations and win there. Sarah Murray has details.
John Kasich may have won the tightest race in New Hampshire last night, the race for second place. Even though the Ohio governor came in second to Donald Trump, he still beat expectations, and more importantly, he beat out the other establishment candidates in the race, like Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and Christie. That all but ensures he will head on to South Carolina and maybe to a number of states past that, further muddying the field going forward. During his speech last night, he thanked his supporters and said he planned on carrying his positive message on to South Carolina.
How could any man be so lucky, huh? To have all of you, to be so happy about life and family and the fact that the Lord's blessed me. We are at the beginning of this campaign season. Tonight we head to South Carolina, and we will move through South Carolina all across this country, and we'll end up in the Midwest, and you just wait. Let me tell you, there's so much going to happen. If you don't have a seatbelt, go get one. We're going to shake this country from top to bottom. Thank you all very much, and God bless you.
And John Kasich wasn't kidding about picking up in South Carolina. He took an overnight flight there, something none of his other rivals did, and he will be on the campaign trail starting today. Back to you guys.
So there's a lot of moving pieces here. What should we make of everything? Well, CNN political commentator and conservative radio host Ben Ferguson joins us now from Dallas to figure it all out. Ben, I know that you've not been a Trump fan or trumpeter, as Sarah Palin would say, but he is now a primary winner. This non-politician who said plenty of offensive things is a solidified Republican frontrunner. Are you losing your mind today?
No, not losing my mind. I mean, if there's any place that Donald Trump should do well, it would be in New Hampshire. This fit his demographics. This fit his, the obvious support that he has among his supporters is very consistent and strong. And when you have a field that's as big as this one was in New Hampshire, with as many people being in double digits barely, you have him in a solid first place. That is not surprising to me at all. The big question is, moving forward, will he be able to do this in other states? Remember, New Hampshire is a place where it's predominantly white. There are not that many minorities there. So this is abnormal electoral map, especially compared to the rest of the country. I also will say this. If you remember, John McCain did very well in 2000 in New Hampshire. He went on to lose badly to then Governor Bush, who became President Bush. So this is far from over.
And Ben, of course, we knew who was going to come in first. We didn't know who was going to come in second. John Kasich surprised everyone with his second place in New Hampshire. This will be a real shot in the arm for him, but he needs some financial support. How quickly will that come now? And, of course, he's now trying to claim the establishment crown.
Well, he certainly needs to be able to raise money off this very quickly. I mean, if there's anything you can remember from Rick Santorum, the last election was that he was not able to capitalize on some of his early victories when it came to raising money against Mitt Romney. And I think that Kasich is going to be very smart about this and make sure he goes out there and asks people for money directly in the days moving forward towards South Carolina. But ultimately, this was a big showing for him. This is also hard work paying off. He spent a lot of time, had a lot of town halls, more than 100 of them in New Hampshire, and that paid off for him. And that's going to, I think, pay big dividends moving forward. Plus, you've had the implosion of Marco Rubio. Make no mistake about it, tonight is a terrible night for Rubio, and it's going to be very hard for him to recover from this, especially after the beating he took in the debate the other night, for at the hands of Christie, who really exposed him in his weakest debate thus far.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the field here. You have Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, as well as Marco Rubio, all walking away with just over 10% of the vote each. It seems as though Ted Cruz is leading among them, and he will likely do well in South Carolina. So with Rubio having a bad day, explain why Ted Cruz is still in this thing.
Well, I think Ted Cruz is definitely a candidate that was not going to do well in New Hampshire. The fact that he can finish in the top 3 or 4 is certainly a victory for him. One of the main reasons why is many of the people voting, the majority of them, more than 70%, did not identify as evangelical Christian. Well, you compare that to New Hampshire, Iowa, there's a big difference here. So for him to just have a solid showing going to South Carolina, that is going to be a big showdown there. He obviously has got a solid ground game in South Carolina, and that's going to be important.
And Ben, further down the food chain, what should happen next? Christie has said he will head home. Take a deep breath. We've heard that before. Marco Rubio, as you said, had a bad night. He's disappointed. So should Christie, Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson, all three struggling now at the bottom there, should they bail out and leave it to the others?
I think definitely Carly Fiorina and Ben Carson, it's time for them to hang it up. And the longer they stay in at this point, I think it's just for their own personal, the gravitas, I guess you could say. I've always said when you know that you're not a viable candidate, that is when you need to allow your supporters to go somewhere else. What's interesting about Christie, and I guess you could say the big asterisk next to his name right now, is he had an incredible debate the other night, and it brought down Marco Rubio. To see him drop out now would just be a little bit odd. But at the same time, I think he knows he had to have a good night here. He does not have near the ground game that I think he needs in South Carolina. And I think that he is also a realist. And I think he understands that, look, you got to take a big, deep breath after this, really reassess, talk to your donors. A lot of this is going back to your donors and saying, are you willing to support me for the next 2 primaries? And if they say no, then you might see all 3 of them drop out of this.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see who they pick after that.
It's a weird election. Think about tonight. We're talking about Donald Trump winning and Bernie Sanders winning. Those are 2 non-establishment people that have had big nights in New Hampshire. You got to be excited about that if you're an outsider liking this and wanting this, but you got to put a big asterisk next to both of them. This is not reality. New Hampshire is not reality of how this is going to go moving forward.
I'm going to miss the crowded Republican field and that debate stage. It's like a reality show I've loved for all these months.
So you're the guy that was watching all those undercard debates. I knew I would meet him eventually.
Exactly. All right, well, Ben Ferguson, you're our favorite TV star. Thanks for giving us some insight. Our CNN political commentator and conservative radio host joining us from Dallas.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
But hey, maybe some of you are obsessed with this topic as well. You can see the full results and complete coverage of the New Hampshire primary on our website. Head to cnn.com/politics.
A short break here, but still to come, a warning from the UN as a Syrian rebel stronghold comes under relentless attack. We have an explosive report from inside the city of Aleppo.
And the U.S. intelligence chief spells out the upcoming threat from ISIS.